Good morning, little corkboards. Or as we say, good time zone and warm greetings to wherever you are in the world. This is Amelia, aka Space.Puffin, and in 1 week, I go back to work. Consider this your forewarning. But we have made a huge dent in this bad boy, and we'll continue to do so. Figuratively. Please don't hurt my books. Just be aware to expect more time between updates, especially as I go into my new routines and pay my bills. But until then, I shall continue to let the pretty Chinese boys consume my mind. Thank you so much for enabling me. And then especially big thanks to everyone who's given me advice so that I can become the best Lianlian owner that I can be. Look, he's having a blast. Yeah, NORWAY has proven to be a great enrichment exercise and also a Lianlian burrito. I didn't think I could love him more than I already do. He also somehow seems to be giving off less killing intent this way. And so the number one method I've been tipped about from you guys is that I should probably look into adopting a Ghost King species of mini doll for Lianlian to play with. But not just any old Ghost King will do. It has to be a Crimson Rain species. So I asked around, did a fair amount of research, and I think that the most popular Crimson Rain species is this version. However, I am very partial to the cuteness of this other species. And it seems from what you guys are telling me, Lianlian won't mind either way. And in fact might welcome his own little harem of Ghost Kings. So, I got both. I'm adopting 2 Crimson Rain mini dolls in the near future. However, I did get them from different sellers. So in this moment, as we speak, they are racing to get here. So let's see which one of them gets here first and gets to be the first one to spend time with Lianlian. Because whoever gets here second will have to wait in the box for a little bit. I heard it's a little bit like when adopting cats. Basically, we have to ease them into the household and also make sure that they understand their positions in this household, in which Lianlian is, you know, top dog. And also, I don't want to overwhelm Lianlian because he's going to have to take responsibility as the original mini doll of this household. I trust him though. Look at his face. This is the most trustworthy mini doll you've ever laid eyes on. If anyone can handle these Ghost Kings, it's this guy. But let's stop playing with dolls for now and get back to the pretty boys. Okay, so for the last read-along, we got to the famous dice scene yet again, and okay, I know this scene was supposed to be, you know, it's supposed to be a bit low-key horny, but I have to say, I was just so enraptured by how they were talking to each other, how they were looking at each other. Like there is a lot of good stuff happening there, and like I was reminded, especially by the ghosts who would pop in and be a bit like, this is very suggestive, you should pay attention to that. And as I understand, you know, the translation that they've used in the books, choosing to do like low and high instead of big and small, because that is what you would naturally say when talking about dice games in English. It does take a little bit away from that, the innuendo sort of feeling this scene gives. But I'm just saying, there is so much going on between them, and just, you know, Xie Lian is finally seeing HuaLian in his true form for the first time, and he is having a lot of thoughts about these things. And it's like, it's it's so distracting. It's a nice scene. And speaking of Xie Lian, his whole moth to a fucking lantern act here. Gosh, he was just so happy to be here, actually. He was so happy to see Sanlong again. And you know, it's just in these little actions, these little things that we see, like in how he smiles when he hears the ghosts and like the attendant talk so highly about HuaLian. How he was initially trying to just stay, you know, back in the crowd, but the moment he hears Sanlong's voice, he's like, oh shit, I gotta get closer, and then he kind of moves forward. And how his heart skips a fucking beat when HuaLian chuckles. Yeah, Xie Lian is just a case study, really, in someone who's crushing so hard but hasn't quite realized that's what's happening yet. But anyway, that was fun. I love the adaptation as well, which you can tell because whenever I do like a little bit of like the anime in the background or the soundtrack in the background, it's for the scenes that I really enjoyed. the scenes that are actually playing in my head while I'm reading. And yes, episode 2 of season 2 had some of my favorite scenes. The red curtain, absolutely splendid. I really want to dive into the soundtracks I haven't really gotten into just yet. And that is definitely one of them. I don't even listen to it regularly, only whenever I watch or rewatch these episodes, but it's still like I still have that melody stuck in my head. It's just that good. It's that good of a song. Anyway, other things happened as well. We did get our very first descriptions of Bai Wuxiang. Like, Bai Wuxiang was mentioned in chapters something early in volume 1 as well, but not really given any more detail other than being the ghost king who was responsible for the fall of Shanla. But now he's actually starting to feel like a character to me, more so than just a concept. And the reason why I'm starting to feel this way is because we're getting a description from Xie Lian. And starting at this paragraph on page 111, that Supreme was always dressed in snow-white funeral garb, his expansive sleeves fluttering, and he wore a cry-smiling mask on his face. The mask was called that because the right half of it was smiling and the left half was crying, half joyous, half sad. If he was seen somewhere, it meant that place would soon be doomed to ruin and chaos would befall the land. In the last battle before the fall of his kingdom, Xie Lian stood upon the towering city walls of Shanla's imperial capital. His face was covered in grime and tears and written with a lost and bemused expression as he gazed down at his kingdom. In his blurred vision, there stood a white silhouette among the fields of corpses just outside the city walls, his giant white sleeves fluttering, his figure distinct. Xie Lian dropped his head to look down at him, and the white apparition raised his head to look at Xie Lian and waved directly at him. This is a memory Xie Lian is telling us about, and the reason why this is important is because we have Bai Wuxiang doing an action. He waved. This is a deliberate action that can be interpreted as mocking. So just from this description in this flashback, we can actually start to feel a character form here. Like, Bai Wuxiang is not just the fear of the human faces to me anymore. Like, this is actually a person. And I'm a little bit conflicted about all this because, yeah, I have theories. I have a lot of theories around Bai Wuxiang, and currently one of them is, as you guys might know, that Xie Lian is Bai Wuxiang in some form or another. However, it's not really stacking up with the recent evidence we've been receiving. There are some things in this text that are eerily familiar. We have this mask with the laugh and cry face, which is, a little signature thing that Xie Lian does now, do you know whether to laugh or cry? And then there's like the fact of this white, like dressed in all white, always in this funeral garb. And Xie Lian is also a character known for dressing in all white. However, because of these memories, I mean, there is a possibility that they're just, Xie Lian's distorted memories of how things happened, because there's some psychological bullshit going on here. However, it could mean that Bai Wuxiang really is a very, very separate character from Xie Lian, which means that I'm kind of blank again. However, the fact that he has these things that are so Xie Lian reminiscent to me makes me think that maybe he originates from around Xie Lian. Because as far as we know, he didn't exist before Shanla. Shanla was like when he became the calamity to look out for. He was the nightmare of that generation of heavenly officials. So I have another theory, and it's super vague because I don't have any details, but remember the short film, right? In the short film, we have a scene where we meet a new character that was not named, and this character also has that little bit of like the the long brown hair sort of thing going for him. Like, I feel like maybe this person could be connected to Bai Wuxiang as well, in some shape or another. But shelving that for now, the actual theory that I think I'm most on board with right now is, when I first watched Donghua, I had, I had two like immediate thoughts when we first saw Bai Wuxiang in the flashback in episode 3 and then learned more about him in episode 4, which was that Bai Wuxiang really did look like HuaLian from the back for a second, but that whatever. But also the transition from Bai Wuxiang happened over Lianlian's face. And from that moment, I've been a little bit suspicious that Lianlian is more connected with Bai Wuxiang than, I think it's kind of, that's the thing you should be believing. You should believe that Lianlian is connected to Bai Wuxiang, which is why I'm suspicious of this as well, because it's like, are they trying to fool me somehow? But that is my current standing. It's kind of where I'm at right now. I think Lianlian has something to do with Bai Wuxiang. Either he is really being like kind of possessed by him or the remnants of Bai Wuxiang, kind of like Qirong is currently possessing Guji's father, but like he's, weakened or whatever, because we do know that he did fight Zhongwu and is believed to be dead. So I'm guessing that whatever happened in that fight might have weakened him to the point where he just can't become himself yet. But who knows, maybe he is aware of everything that is happening and is watching from behind Lianlian's eyes, in a sense. Anyway, that's my current theory. If you want to hear more about them, you can go back and watch the post discussion in the previous video. For now, I don't really have anything else to say about everything else that's going on. We are now, at the armory, finally meeting Ming. And I'm looking forward to meeting Ming, and I'm looking forward to discovering some elemental masters in their unnatural habitat. But before we do that, question. I have another question from the gambling den at my server, this time from the wonderful Sappy Child. Sappy came the closest this time around to guessing how long I was going to spend on recording a video, and therefore I am dedicating some time to answering their question here in this video. Okay, here goes. Okay, Puffin, another recording, another fanfic request, poorly disguised as a question. What kind of music do you think HuaLian would listen to? Oh no, I'm already dreading this actually. I don't just mean songs you associate with them. What's in Xie Lian's scrap collecting playlist? What does Hua-Chang cry to in his bedroom when he's yearning? Please tell us about your taste in music by projecting it onto HuaLian. Yeah, oh no. Where do I even begin? I am such an old person when it comes to music. Like, I'll have my nostalgia playlist. I'll have songs that I listen to a lot. And sometimes I will discover new music and then I'll listen to that for like months and months on end. So I don't know. This is hard. This is really hard. Like, I'm the last person you really come to ask for music recommendations from, because I'm the one asking usually. That said, I have been watching/reading TGCF for like half a year now, so obviously sometimes I will listen to a song and be like, oh, this is such a TGCF song. So let me have a think and let's see what I can come up with. As in, let me pull up my playlists, because holy shit. This is a hard question for me. I am so not the person to answer this. Okay, I tried to make some notes, but again, I don't feel like I'm the right person to be answering this question, but I'm gonna give it a shot. So, my headcanon is that for Hua-Chang, let's do him first, it's about lyrics over style more than anything. He will listen to any genre, he will listen to anything, as long as the lyrics is something he can self-insert into. He likes to imagine himself into the story of any love song, except I don't know if he was very into the ones with a happy ending until recently, because it's only really recently that he has any indication that maybe it's not too dumb for him to be hoping for a happy ending for himself. If there's one song I would assign him that he would be like, he's crying in his room every time he hears this song, like it's I'm going to be outing myself as a huge Of Monsters and Men fan here, by the way, because I listen to their music quite a bit. Like, recently they just came out with a new single and they're coming out with a new album as well. So they've been hitting my playlists quite often. And I think most people know this song because it was like the rave in like AMVs a few years back, like when they came out with this album. But King and Lionheart, that's HuaChang's guilty pleasure self-insert song, I feel. It's got amazing lyrics. It gives me HuaChang self-insert HuaLian for real. Give it a listen if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure you must have heard it. It was quite popular. And he also unironically listens to that one Twilight soundtrack. I mean, this man screams things along to 1,000 years and just means it. He's totally in his feelings. But yeah, you can give HuaChang any song really. It has to do with the lyrics though. The lyrics have to hit him. Xie Lian, headcanonically for me, listens to whatever was on that one iPod or that one CD. Like, you remember back in the day when people were like on the street giving people CDs with their music, trying to make it? Yeah, Xie Lian would have picked up a few of those that go in the trash like immediately. And also CDs that were sent out to record labels with like, please listen to this and give it your consideration, and then ended up in the trash. He'd pick up those as well. So my headcanon for Xie Lian as a modern garbage man, I suppose, is that he would just listen to whatever he found in the trash. And you know, when people started throwing out their iPods, I guess he started listening to those as well. I would probably assign him like a lot of like indie music and a lot of indie bands. Like, I think he'd enjoy music from like people I enjoy, like Seafret, Amber Run. He'd listen to Scratches by Kite, Welcome Home Son by Radical Face. And I don't know if he'd listen to these, but I'm gonna assign him like a gazillion of Monsters and Men songs. To me, Xie Lian is Sugar in a Bowl, he's Crystals, he's Ordinary Creature, and Eye of the Storm. Gosh, I feel like this answer was so uneventful. Let me turn this question back at you guys. Let me get some help from the audience. I would like you to answer this question for me. What song would you think that Xie Lian would listen to? What song would you think HuaChang would listen to? Give me one for each. One for each, that's your challenge. And afterwards, I'll put them all in the playlist. I'll do one Xie Lian playlist and one HuaChang playlist, and we can have a look at it in the server and listen to it. Collaborative effort, let's do it. So that's your mission now. Leave me a comment, give me one song that you think HuaChang would listen to and a song you think Xie Lian would listen to. In any universe, of course. It doesn't matter if they have English lyrics, Chinese lyrics, anything, give me anything. As long as you feel like this is HuaChang's vibe, this is Xie Lian's vibe, put it in a comment and we'll make a playlist of it. Okay, apologizing again to Sappy for this absolutely train wreck of an answer. This is really hard for me. I really think this is the hardest question you could have asked me personally. But hopefully you got a little bit of insight through this question. And hopefully we can have more fun with it once I learn you guys' replies. So if you would like me to dedicate some time in a video to answer one of your questions, or if you'd like to challenge me to do something even more fun/outrageous, depending on whether or not someone will actually win this betting competition again. The way to do that is to join my Discord and also become a supporter by donating to me on Ko-fi. And here is our current board, and I'm about to add to it. First of all, I'd like to welcome 2 new members to the Temple of Corkboards, and that is Litoria Phalax and Aquila. Thank you guys so much for your donations. I'll be putting your names up on the board. A shout out and a heart for the wonderful D Misfortunes. Thank you so much for coming back with another donation this month. I'll be putting this up by your name, and I hope that you're doing well. Another donation came in from the wonderful Maru, so this time I've been picking you fruit. I have no idea if this is tasty, you'll have to let me know. Because you've been collecting so many hearts and I need some of them back to give to people. So I'm replacing them with a special pin that very few people have. So that's up by your name now. I also have this wonderful dog. This is a functions pin, by the way, which I will be putting up by the wonderful Ninchan. Ninchan, thank you so much for all your support throughout these last months. You now have a special guardian, the same as function. Super grateful for all your support. I hope you enjoy your new name tag guardian. I also had to break out a couple of special pins this time around. I have 2 people who will be receiving these butterfly pins today. This first one goes out to Gigi. Gigi, thank you so much for all your support and for enabling me as much as you do. I hope that you've been enabled in return as well. So as thanks, you'll be receiving one of my most special pins, which is going up by your name. One of HuaChang's many butterflies. And the second butterfly goes out to Weedsy. Thank you so much for all your support, for your wonderful comments and for the messages. I hope you will continue to enjoy this channel for a long while. So there we go. And lastly, because I wasn't able to ever get you a butterfly pin, melody aria, I got new pins, and I heard you like bunnies. So yeah, I got you this cute little bunny to go up by your name. I have a collection of other animals as well now, but this is the first one that is going up on the board in place of the butterfly that I think you'd appreciate if I didn't give you. And that is the board for this time. I've been shuffling it around a little bit to make a little bit more space and to make it easier for me to find names, because this is a puzzle every time I do it. But it's fun. I feel like every time I'm looking for your name on the board, if you're already up here, I get to remind myself of all the support that I've been getting over these last few months. And again, I just think it's such a nice experience to have this physical reminder of all this. So thank you guys so much for your donations, and let's get into the video. As in the reading part of the video, because I think that is why you're still here. So let's see how long we'll read for today. I'm hoping to finish off the Ghost City part. Hoping to at least get to the point where we meet Earthmaster again. And who knows, we'll see how it goes. Oh my god, I'm so distracted. I just got a message from work that was like, hey, I hope you have had a great summer vacation. See you next week. Here's the instructions. But it's okay, I've had a lovely vacation. I've had a great break, and I managed to do so much. There are still a lot of things that I need to do, but I think that actually once I get into the routine of like everyday stuff again, I'll find time. I'll find the time to do all these things that I want to do, because they give me so much joy. In fact, again, thank you guys so much for having spent so much time with me. I've been running this channel for about 8 months now, and it's been a blast. And I'm hoping to continue to have this be my new hobby. I've been able to meet so many cool people and discover so many incredible stories thanks to you guys. So here's to the rest of the year. Let's finish 2025, hopefully a little closer to the end of this wonderful series that is Heaven Official's Blessing. So let's settle in and read chapter 16. Borrowing Luck, Night Crawl in Paradise Manor. And so Xie Lian bent at the waist and greeted it. Hello there. General Kenobi, no, oh gosh, I can't believe it. I was not supposed to do that. Let's try it from the top. And so Xie Lian bent at the waist and greeted it. Hello there. Hearing the greeting, that eye squinted harder, turning itself into a full crescent, like it was smiling. Oh my gosh, just Erming is, yeah. I'm just trying to imagine kind of the happiness that Erming is feeling. Because again, like I have this theory that Erming is really showing what HuaChang's true feelings are. And it's just, it's so nice to kind of have like that little window into his soul, so to speak. Though also, we do also believe that it was created from his eye, right? His right eye. So, little tragic backstory, probably. So yeah, Erming is smiling. The large eye spun left and right, extremely lively, as if it wasn't just a pattern carved onto a scimitar hilt, but the real living eye of a human. HuaChang's lips curled upward. Gaga, it likes you. Xie Lian raised his head. Really? HuaChang raised his brow. Really, it's too lazy to spare a single glance at those it doesn't like. In fact, there are very few that Erming actually likes. Hearing this, Xie Lian smiled at Erming. Thank you then. He turned to HuaChang. I rather like it too. At his words, the eye blinked madly, and the scimitar started shaking all of a sudden from where it hung at HuaLian's waist. He reprimanded it. No. No what? Xie Lian asked. No, HuaLian reiterated. Erming shook again, looking desperate to jump out of its scabbard. Xie Lian asked curiously. Are you telling it no? Yes, HuaLian deadpanned. It wants you to pet it, but I'm telling it no. Xie Lian grinned. Well, why not? Oh my god, Erming! Where did I... There you are. I put Erming to guard his highness, the crown prince. But I feel like we need him here for this. I don't know what he'll do. He'll blind you guys. I just feel like he needs to be here for this section. Like a page turner. Oh no. Okay, we have art, guys. We have art. Oh my gosh. I like this interpretation of Erming. It's a little creepier. Like, the eye is a little creepier than the Dongwon one. The Dongwon one seems it seems very human. And it's described as seeming very human here as well. But it's definitely got that more like, this is a part of the sword. And oh my gosh, Xie Lian has these little stars coming out of him. He's a sword enthusiast. I know what that sounded like. I meant in the literal sense of the word, guys. And if I meant it in the other sense as well, that's something both Xie Lian and I have to figure out. He reached out. Erming's eye instantly widened, like it was looking at him with great anticipation. I can't pet here, poking the eye will hurt, Xie Lian thought, then lowered his hand and stroked lightly along the curve of the hilt. The eye squinted into a full crescent line and quivered even harder, as if it was extremely pleased and enjoying the touch very much. The more Xie Lian stroked the scimitar, the more intriguing he found it. I can't believe it. Like, reading this is worse. Reading this is worse than having watched it. But yes, we're coming into like the whole animal thing now. He was the type of person animals liked. When he'd pet furry dogs or cats, they'd squint their eyes like this when they got comfortable and would often throw themselves into his embrace, whining and mewling. Who knew that he'd be stroking a cold silver scimitar, that legendary cursed blade no less, like he would a puppy? In what way was this a bloody cursed blade of misfortune? Xie Lian hadn't believed it before, but after seeing this with his own eyes, he threw away all that awful hearsay entirely, tossing it into the trash pile labeled not believable. An evil bloody ritual wouldn't forge a spirit this clever and cute. Oh, look at you, Erming. You're a clever little blade. Clever, cute little blade, huh? Insert screeching sound here. Okay, let's put you away. The two spent a considerable amount of time discussing and critiquing various famous swords and legendary blades in detail, and Xie Lian exited the armory in high spirits after, even grabbing hold of HuaLian's hands on the return to Paradise Hall. Sorry. I was distracted by the hand-holding. The hand-holding gets me every time. The boy had also been brought in after being washed up and dressed in clean bandages. Although his face was still wholly covered, he looked new and refreshed. He was a person of slender frame and delicate build, and should have been a seedling with infinite possibilities. But the version of him here right now was one of hunched shoulders and slumped figure. A cowering form who couldn't meet anyone's eyes, a pitiful soul. Xie Lian pulled the boy to sit. With her last words, Miss Xiaoying asked me to take care of you, and I agreed to it. But nevertheless, I still have to ask what you want to do. Would you be interested in following me in cultivation from now on? The boy stared at him blankly, as if afraid to believe the words he was hearing. That someone was actually willing to take him in and teach him. He looked hesitant and hopeful. Xie Lian continued. I can't say the conditions at my place are good, but I can still promise you won't need to hide any longer. You won't need to steal food and you won't be beaten. As he spoke, Xie Lian didn't notice that next to him, HuaLian's eyes narrowed. He was watching the boy with a cold, judging look. And this is kind of important, right? Because we see Lianlian with HuaLian at the end of the sneaking around ghost Paradise Manor part, where he seems to have been interrogating him, and HuaLian is obviously suspicious of him, which honestly adds to my suspicion that, you know, there's way more to Lianlian than what we see at face value. It wouldn't surprise me if he was a lot stronger, or even, as I've been theorizing, connected to Bai Wuxiang. And also this is interesting because we are getting, again, a little bit of text that Xie Lian doesn't notice. We're kind of experiencing a lot of this from Xie Lian's point of view, but now we're specifically saying that Xie Lian didn't notice that next to him, HuaLian's eyes narrowed. Well, I was narrowed. Xie Lian continued warmly. If you can't remember your own name, then why don't we come up with a new one? The boy pondered for a moment and said, Ying. Xie Lian supposed that the name was to commemorate Miss Xiaoying, since both names used the character for firefly. He nodded. Good, that's a good name. You're from the kingdom of Yong'an, and Yong'an's national surname is Lang. So why don't you use that as your new name and call yourself Lianlian? The boy finally nodded, hesitantly. Xie Lian understood it as the boy accepting the offer to follow him. The banquet began. It was a small feast that HuaLian had prepared for Xie Lian, but by its setup and size, it could very well host over a dozen. Innumerous women carried jade plates in their hands, and upon the plates were various delicacies, fine wines, fresh fruits, and small refreshments. Their offerings were endless, and their steps were dainty and light as they walked along the sides of the main hall in a line, each presenting their jaded plate as they approached the black jaded divan. Lianlian watched but didn't dare to reach out, and it wasn't until Xie Lian pushed some of the plates towards him that he slowly grabbed a few items to eat. Watching him, another scene flashed in Xie Lian's mind. It was of another boy. His face was wrapped in bandages, dirty and unkempt. He was kneeling on the floor, hugging a plate of offerings, his head bowed low as he stuffed his face. Yeah, this is also in the donghua, like the transparent baby HuaLian on top of Lianlian. And I think that at this point in time, you're supposed to make the connection that this is not the same boy, because Xie Lian is talking about another child. And if he was the same as Lianlian or reminiscent of Lianlian, I feel like there would be like a connection here. This is very specifically, we're talking about another kid. And I think that maybe at this point, you should be starting to be like, child, Xie Lian. Though of course you could also be like, oh, this is, you know, part of the whole plague thing. There was a plague after all. Kids were starving everywhere and probably covered in bandages. But also right now we're reading this fucking book with this cover. So if you were reading the book with the cover, you'd be like, Just then, a sashaying lady in purple silk approached, offering a carafe of wine. HuaLian reached out and poured for Xie Lian. Gaga, have a cup? Xie Lian's mind was occupied and he wasn't paying attention, so he carelessly accepted the cup, delivering it directly to his lips. He didn't realize it was wine until the drink entered his mouth. Then his eyes refocused once more. His gaze just happened to land on what, or rather who, was behind HuaLian. The lady who offered the wine looked back and winked at him. Xie Lian sputtered on the spot. Good thing he'd already swallowed that sip of wine, and nothing came spluttering out of his mouth. He only choked, coughing non-stop. Lianlian took fright and almost dropped the cake in his hand. Xie Lian soothed as he coughed. It's nothing. HuaLian gently patted his back. What's wrong? Is the wine not to your liking? Xie Lian quickly explained himself. Oh no, it's very good. I just suddenly remembered that my cultivation method forbids alcohol. Oh, HuaLian said. Then this is my fault for being inconsiderate and making Gaga break his vow. It's not your fault, Xie Lian said. I'd just forgotten. I feel like this is kind of halfway a lie. Because he did have a sip from Windmaster earlier, and now he's kind of covering up the fact that he recognized Windmaster, right? So it's true that it's the excessiveness, right? But this was just a cover-up. That's why he's spluttering and coughing. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead, turned around, and stealthily glimpsed towards the center of the main hall. The lady who had offered the wine had her back to him as she sashayed off towards the doors, her figure sensual and seductive, charming and graceful. HuaLian only paid attention to what was at hand and focused entirely on Xie Lian, so he spared no attention for those beautiful women. So you noticed that, huh, Xie Lian? Therefore, he naturally paid no mind to their faces. However, the face Xie Lian had seen just now was clear and recognizable. That sweet, seductive lady who had offered him wine was none other than the Windmaster Qing Xuan. In order to sneak into Paradise Manor, the Lord Windmaster hadn't hesitated to transform into a woman. That wink gave Xie Lian quite the shock, and he thought, "You'd better give me more wine to swallow this down." Unaware, HuaLian said conversationally, I always thought cultivation was meant simply for living a carefree, pleasurable life. If you must forbid this or that, then what's the point? What do you think? Xie Lian studied himself, swiftly and casually said back, That depends on the path you choose. Some sects don't mind earthly pleasures, but my chosen path of cultivation has always forbidden drinking and licentious acts. Alcohol can be overlooked once in a while, but abstinence from the latter is absolute. When he said the word abstinence, HuaLian cocked his right brow, displaying an unreadable expression that could be either displeasure or annoyance. Yeah, is HuaLian only just now realizing that, oh shit, licentious acts might not be on the table? I don't doubt that he would adapt. But, I guess in the sense, if this is the first time HuaLian learns about this is also Xie Lian more or less indirectly telling him that, yes, I am a virgin. Of 817 years, which is honestly, you should be flattered, HuaLian. Like the fact that he even glances at you twice, like more than twice, like this man took abstinence very seriously. Like the deck is stacked in your favor, actually. Don't worry too much. Xie Lian continued. Actually, it also forbids hatred. A gambling hall involves extreme joy and anguish and can easily produce hatred, so it is a place best avoided. But if one can maintain control of one's mind, unmoved by wins and losses, then there is no need to wholly avoid gambling. Hearing this, HuaLian laughed out loud. No wonder Gogo was still interested in playing at the gambler's den. Going around in circles, Xie Lian had finally brought the subject of the conversation naturally to gambling and said, Speaking of which, Sanlang, your gambling techniques are amazing to behold. I'm just lucky, that's all, HuaLian said. Ellipsy answer. Comparing that to his own luck, Xie Lian felt rather woeful. I really am curious, and don't tease me, Sanlang, but is there really a technique to rolling dice? If there wasn't, then HuaLian couldn't just will the numbers he wanted back at the gambler's den, and that waning moon officer couldn't have so easily rolled 2 6s. HuaLian only smiled. Why would I dare tease Gaga? Of course there's a secret technique. But it's not something that's learned in a day, and not everyone who's learned the technique can master it. Xie Lian had more or less expected that answer. HuaLian added, However, I can tell you of a faster way. I promise Gogo will be able to succeed as he wishes and win every round. What way? Xie Lian asked. HuaLian raised his right hand. The very same right hand that had the red string tied on the 3rd finger. Gosh, we're getting a lot of focus on this string. The string is important. Like, yes, it's been very obvious, like a part of his character design that I did pay attention to the very first time I saw it. Because again, like a lot of Asian media will have this red string of faith sort of thing going on. But what is it? What is up with this string? If I'm gonna guess, because I do actually have a guess. Back between season 1 and season 2, I did analyze a couple of songs. I analyzed the 2 opening songs from the Donghua. And I remember one of the lyrics had something to do with string. And one of the stories that was a note on it had to do with like lovers who would tie hair around their fingers, right? So I wonder if this red string that Huachang has is one of the things, along with the red pearl, that he has in kind of memory of Xie Lian. Like, there's a reason why it's getting so much focus. Like, why has he tied this red string around his finger? It's not something Xie Lian recognizes, or at least not something he remembers. But did this red string somehow come from Xie Lian as well, is what I'm wondering. Because Huachang seems to be treating it as a sort of thing, like a lover's charm, basically. Kind of like in that song lyric. So is this string, again, something that Huachang has happened to find himself with? As in, did you steal the string, Huachang? I don't know what the string is from. Maybe it's a string from one of Xie Lian's clothes or something. This little thief. I'll forgive him though, he's hot. And also cares for you very much. Gosh, I keep getting distracted. It's when HuaLian is in the same room, I get so thrown off all the time. I'm looking for information in everything they say, and maybe I should stop. Okay, so Huachang raised his right hand, the very same right hand that had the red string tied on the third finger. The red string was tied into a small bow on the back of that hand, bright and vivid. He beckoned Xie Lian. Give me your hand. Xie Lian didn't know what it was for, but since Huachang asked for his hand, he gave it to him. Huachang's hand had no warmth of life, but it was not freezing. He squeezed Xie Lian's hand and held it for a bit, then smiled before turning it over and tossing 2 dice into his palm. Try now. Xie Lian chanted mentally for 6s and rolled the dice. As they clattered to a stop, the dice indeed revealed 2 red 6s. What trick is this? Xie Lian was amazed. No trick, Huachang replied. I've simply lent Gaga a bit of luck. So luck can be borrowed like spiritual power? Xie Lian said in wonder. Huachang laughed. Of course. Next time, if Gaga is going to make bets with anyone, come see me first. I'll lend you as much luck as you want. I promise your opponent will suffer a loss so great he won't make a comeback for 100 years. The 2 played for a few dozen more rounds, and Xie Lian confirmed for himself that it was indeed so before he stopped to say he was tired. Huachang ordered for Lianlian to be settled before personally escorting Xie Lian to the guest chamber. Watching as that red silhouette slowly disappeared down the hall, Xie Lian closed the door, sat by the table, and used a hand to cover his forehead, bending as he supported his mind's weight. The more thoughtful Huachang was, the more guilty Xie Lian felt. There is really nothing to criticize about the way Sanlang treats me. Hopefully, this case has nothing to do with him, and once the truth comes out, I'll explain everything and apologize, Xie Lian thought. He had only sat for a moment when he heard someone calling him from outside the door with a small voice. Your Highness! Your Highness! Your Highness the Crown Prince! Recognizing the voice, Xie Lian immediately rose to open the door, and the person waiting just outside leapt in. It was indeed Shi Qingxuan in her female form. She was still dressed in that ghost lady get-up, a dress of diaphanous silk. What is that word?
Diaphanous.
Diaphanous, especially of fabric, light, delicate, and translucent. Okay, diaphanous. A dress of diaphanous silk with her waist wrapped tight to a dainty width. The moment she leapt in, she rolled onto the ground in a heap and transformed back to a man, hand to his chest. I can't breathe, my God, I'm going to be choked to death by this thing. Xie Lian closed the door behind him, and when he looked back, what he saw was a full-grown man in a wicked purple silk dress, lying on the ground and wildly ripping at his chest and waist bindings. Xie Lian couldn't look and covered his eyes. Lord Windmaster, can't you just change back to your Taoist robes? Am I stupid? Xie Qingxuan replied. Walking around in the dark night in a conspicuous white robe, I'd be a target. But in your current getup, on some level, you're more of a target, Xie Lian thought. Xie Lian crouched down next to him. Lord Windmaster, how did you sneak in? Didn't we agree to meet in 3 days? Well, what was I to do? Xie Qingxuan replied. I asked around on the streets, and they all said your highness was sent to the Paradise Manor. And isn't Paradise Manor the Ghost King's lair? Even the name of the place sounded bad. I watched from afar and decided it was definitely an obscene and wanton place. So, I was worried about you, and expended tremendous effort to sneak in. What an unlucky journey this has been. Either I get dragged to facials by women and girls, or I have to swallow my honor and dress like this. I have never, ever made sacrifices this huge. But you're obviously enjoying yourself, Xie Lian thought. Where's His Highness Taiwan? I hope he doesn't start anything else, with my lord having left him out there. Xie Qingxuan finally ripped through all the bindings, gathering breath at last, and sprawled across the ground like a puddle. Don't worry, I pulled rank and commanded him not to move a muscle, so there shouldn't be any more issues. But seriously, your highness, you're so lucky. Huh? Xie Lian gaped. Me? Lucky? Yeah, Xie Qingxuan exclaimed. Look how miserable Long Chinchou and I have been in Ghost City. We either get hung up with the threat of having our pants pulled down, or we wander the streets like stray dogs without a place willing to take us in. And here you are, eating well, drinking well, and there is even a ghost king keeping you company. Well, when he put it that way, it was indeed rather tragic. Xie Qingxuan finally pulled himself up from the floor. So, your highness, do you still remember our objective for coming to Ghost City? Xie Lian regained his composure and replied, Of course I remember. Back at the Paradise Hall, I was preparing for our mission. Xie Qingxuan looked at him in confusion. Really? What exactly did you prepare at the Paradise Hall? I only remember you playing around with Crimson Rainsalt's flower, rolling dice. You guys weren't even playing properly. You were feeling up his hands, and he was feeling up yours. What kind of new method was that? Oh my fucking god. Yeah, just a new gambling method, Xie Qingxuan. You wouldn't get it. I also do find little comments like this so funny. Again, like just outsiders' perspectives of what is going on. Yeah. In Xie Lian's defense, he really was trying to prepare for this. Xie Lian explained himself. Lord Windmaster, please don't make it sound so questionable. We were only having a discussion. I found some clues here in Paradise Manor and was investigating. To keep going, I needed a little luck. Xie Lian raised his right hand and curled it into a tight fist, as if he had grabbed hold of something. His face set. And I've gotten it. The two silently slunk out the door. After 2 instants' time, they successfully found that room once more. Xie Lian approached the statue of the woman and took out the 2 dice given to him before. He paused and took a breath before rolling the dice. There was a soft rattle, and sure enough, the roll was 2 red 6s. Xie Lian let out a breath of relief, but he felt worse when he remembered that this luck was lent to him earlier at the Paradise Hall by Hua Chang. Seeing his remorseful expression, Xie Qingxuan patted his shoulders. Since we've come this far, just let it go. If I were you, I would have declined this mission from Junwu, no matter how he begged, lest I be a poor friend. Xie Lian shook his head. At the end of the day, Xie Qingxuan didn't know Junwu very well. This case was certainly awkward for Xie Lian, and Junwu had known it would be. From his understanding of Junwu's character, under normal circumstances, he would never have brought this up with him, and would have appointed another heavenly official to the mission. But even knowing this would be awkward for Xie Lian, Junwu still requested his assistance. This could only mean one thing. Junwu had no one else who was better suited to take on this mission, and only asked him out of necessity. If that was the case, Xie Lian had no choice. Besides, the missing heavenly official set off the distress signal 7 days ago, and Hua Chang had left 7 days ago. That was a coincidence he couldn't ignore. Xie Lian heaved a sigh before taking back the dice and pushing open the door. Behind it was no longer the small, simple chamber he'd seen before, but a dark tunnel with a long stairway stretching into the abyss below, with brisk winds whistling at them from the blackness. Xie Lian traded looks with Xie Qingxuan and nodded. One behind the other, the two entered the tunnel and the darkness beyond. Xie Qingxuan took the lead. He snapped his fingers and ignited a palm torch, illuminating the steps under their feet. Xie Lian closed the door gently and brought up the rear. As they descended, Xie Lian asked of Xie Qingxuan, "Lord Windmaster, were there any heavenly officials banished from the heavenly court in recent years? I mean, besides me?" "There were," Xie Qingxuan replied. "Why do you ask?" "Because I saw a cursed shackle on the wrist of that waning moon officer from Ghost City. That could only come from the heavens, no?" Xie Qingxuan was astonished. "What? Cursed shackle? Then Crimson Rainsalt Flower is using a former heavenly official as his subordinate. What arrogance!" "It can't be arrogance," Xie Lian replied. "If one no longer belongs to the heavens, then it's their choice where they go. Originally, there was no need to question his motives, but that ghost officer's been acting suspiciously. It's worrisome, so I wanted to see what Lord Windmaster's thoughts are on his identity." Xie Qingxuan pondered briefly and said, "There was indeed a martial god of the West who was banished a few years back, and it caused quite a stir at the time." "Martial god of the West? Wasn't that Xuan Yizhen?" Xie Qingxuan continued. "But I don't think that highness would descend to the ghost realm to be a ghost officer. He came from an orthodox background, and his character wasn't frivolous." "That highness, okay. So the previous god of the West was someone with the title Highness, so a prince then. The previous god of the West was likely another prince. Interesting. Noting that down just in case. If that was the case, him being from an orthodox background and not being very frivolous, then why was he banished?" Xie Lian was about to continue his inquiry when the two came to flat ground after 60 or so stone steps. Before them, there was a path about 5 or 6 people wide, leading in only one direction, shrouded in darkness. Behind them was the staircase that led to the surface. On either side were thick, solid walls. There wasn't any need to debate where to go, just go forward. But after walking along that path for only 200 steps, a frigid stone wall loomed before them, blocking their path. Xie Qingxuan frowned. "The path's cut off. No way." He held a palm torch in one hand and used the other to feel around the stone wall, searching for any signs of a release mechanism. He then cast a few spells for clearing illusions to no avail. The wall remained immovable. There was no more he could do. "Maybe I'll just punch a hole through it." "That would cause way too much commotion," Xie Lian said. "All of Paradise Manor would be alerted." Xie Qingxuan placed his hand flat on the stone wall and gave a short blast of spiritual energy, but he dropped his hand after a moment. "Punching it would be useless. This wall is probably over 30 meters thick." But Xie Lian had clearly seen with his own eyes that the waning moon officer had entered here. It was silly to think he'd sneak around just to meditate and reflect in a dead-end tunnel. There had to be some sort of mechanism involved, so the two scrutinized their surroundings in great detail. Soon, Xie Lian pointed. "Lord Windmaster, take a look at the ground. There seems to be something." Xie Qingxuan dropped his palm immediately, and the two squatted around the spot Xie Lian had pointed out. The ground of this tunnel was paved with numerous square bricks, each one about the size of a small door. The brick that they were standing on, right in front of the stone wall, had a drawing upon it. It wasn't a large picture, but it depicted a little person throwing dice. Xie Qingxuan looked up. "So does this mean it's the same method as before? That we have to roll the right number to open the stone wall?" Xie Lian nodded. That appears to be the case, but I didn't come in here with that waning moon officer, so I don't know what the correct role is. We've come this far, Xie Lian said. It's not realistic to turn back just to find that out. Let's roll a random number and see. Xie Lian agreed. Lord Windmaster, why don't you give it a go? I don't know how long my borrowed luck will last. Xie Lian didn't refuse. He picked up the dice and tossed them to the floor. How about that? He rolled a 2 and a 5. They waited briefly, but the stone wall didn't move. Xie Lian picked up the dice. That didn't work as expected, Xie Lian suddenly cried. Your Highness, look under our feet! The image has changed! Hearing this, Xie Lian immediately looked down. Sure enough, the image on the square brick beneath their feet had been a little person rolling dice, but as they watched, the color slowly faded and filled in once more, transforming into a different scene. It looked like a long, fat, thick, black, creepy crawler. What in the world is that? Xie Lian wondered. An earthworm? A leech? Xie Lian guessed. That's what it looks like. There are plenty of them in the paddy fields, so I've seen a lot. Xie Lian wondered some more. What on earth were you doing that you saw a lot of these things? Before his words were finished, he vanished. It wasn't just him. Xie Lian himself disappeared as well. Just as the words, "Were you doing?" were uttered, they both felt the ground give way beneath their feet. The next moment, they were free-falling into another tunnel. Turned out, that stone wall wasn't a door after all. It was literally a stone wall. The square brick beneath their feet was the real door. After tossing the dice, the door opened abruptly and closed instantly. Xie Lian and Xie Lian fell for only a moment before crashing heavily to the ground. Thankfully, the ground was soft. Otherwise, the two would have cratered in deep. They didn't suffer any pain from a tumble and were just pulling themselves up when their heads knocked into each other, and they both gave a cry of "Ah!" at the collision. Xie Lian, with one hand covering his head, felt around above with his other hand, but only made contact with the same soft, wet, muddy earth as the ground they were on. There were no stone tiles. The stone door was long gone. When they fell, the palm torch Xie Lian ignited had been extinguished. Now that he had relit it and brightened their surroundings, the two discovered that they were in a mud tunnel. The tunnel was round with muddy walls and didn't appear to be man-made. Xie Lian rubbed his forehead. What is this place? Did we get thrown here because we rolled the wrong number? Xie Lian pondered briefly and replied, It's very possible. That stone door is already gone, meaning we have no way to turn back. Let's think of a way to escape first. Yep, we're with the earthworms. Let's read through this quickly, shall we? The two talked it over and decided to keep following the tunnel path. The tunnel had numerous twists and turns, and if a full-grown adult wanted to stand up straight in it, they'd have a bit of a hard time. They could only walk by bending at the waist or crawl, making their movements both slow and tiresome. The air in this tunnel was warm and moist, the mud clingy and annoying. Each of their steps sank and dragged, watery and gross. Sometimes they would even step in the rotten remains of plants or animals. Xie Lian's face never changed, but Xie Lian had goosebumps popping up all over. But the longer they travelled, the more Xie Lian felt something was off. Lord Windmaster, we'd better move faster. This place. Just then, a loud, bizarre rumbling sound reverberated around them. The noise crashed in, the entire tunnel shook, and small blots of mud pitter-pattered down from the tremors. The two exchanged a look, and without a word, they sped off in the opposite direction of the noise. Yet that enormous sound and the massive tremors were thundering their way, going faster than them, pushing closer by the second. The two of them moved arduously, one step shallow and the next step deep, scrambling through the twisting tunnel without an end in sight. Not even a ray of light, and not just that, but the direction they were running towards also reverberated with those same thunderous tremors. They were blocked both front and behind, and the two had to stop. Along with the rumbling, the sound of a massive, heavy body hurtling through the mud whammed past. 2 humongous earthworms wiggled in and appeared before Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan. The 2 worms were swollen and large, their bodies a bruised purple, their skin slightly translucent. The bodies of these worms were segmented with 2 heads or tails. The 2 heads were nothing more than meat stumps. What else could they be, if not incredibly large worms? That stone door had opened and dropped them into these earthworm monsters' nest. Xie Lian raised an arm to guard himself, Roy at the ready, while Shi Qingxuan drew out his Windmaster fan from out of nowhere. Unfortunately, in this narrow tunnel, it was impossible to start any gusts, and any crazed winds would only recoil back at them, making that spiritual device difficult to use. In that moment, Xie Lian remembered that worms were afraid of light and heat, and he shouted a command. "Lord Windmaster, please lend me some spiritual power and intensify the palm torch." Shi Qingxuan followed his directions and clapped Xie Lian's hand with his own left hand, while the flames in his right palm burst dozens of centimeters higher. Xie Lian also swiftly started a right palm torch. Sure enough, the 2 giant worms felt the heat and shrunk back, pulling a few meters away. Using the flames, the pair continued slowly on their path, forcing the giant earthworms to keep their distance and praying for an exit. But the tunnel was narrow, and with such large flames burning, soon enough it wasn't only the worms feeling the heat. Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan themselves were sweating profusely, as if they were baking in an oven, miserable and wretched. And the more horrifying thing was that Shi Qingxuan couldn't keep burning through his power to keep the flames alive, and the fires grew smaller and smaller. They also noticed that although the giant earthworms were still evading them, they weren't as fearful. 2.5 pages in, I'm already tired of the earthworms. After a few more steps, Xie Lian could feel his breathing grow difficult. He said, "Lord Windmaster, the palm torch won't last. The mud here may be moist and loose, but we're still deep underground. Soon we'll run out of air, the fire will die, and we're going to faint." Shi Qingxuan gritted his teeth. "Then we can only use the teleportation array." Although neither of the 2 had a free hand to draw an array, and the current environment wasn't exactly ideal, there was no other way. "Let me find somewhere flat," Xie Lian said. Just then, he felt a small plate beneath his steps. Not moist and spongy, but more like a stone tile. A thought struck Xie Lian, and he immediately crouched down to check. Just as he suspected, it was another stone door. It also had an image of a little person rolling dice on it. Shi Qingxuan stepped onto the tile with him, overjoyed. "Quick, quick, quick! Roll the dice and open it!" Xie Lian was just about to roll the dice when he suddenly thought, "But what if I roll a worse outcome and open an even more horrifying place?" Xie Lian passed the dice to Shi Qingxuan. "You do it!" Without a word, Shi Qingxuan grabbed the dice and tossed. Rattle, rattle. This time, it was a 3 and a 4. Xie Lian picked up the dice readily, and the 2 stood together on top of the door tile. The palm torch in Shi Qingxuan's hand shrank by another inch. The 2 giant worms were squirming and ready to approach. Xie Lian stared intently at the drawing on the tile as it slowly dissolved and then gradually transformed into another picture. It was a forest, with a number of oddly dressed little people dancing in circles around another figure in the center. Just then, one of the worms finally stopped holding back. It charged towards them with its mouth open a slit, dragging its heavy body. Thankfully, when the worm was only a mere meter away from them, the stone door opened. This time, the 2 fell into another narrow hole, except the ground was hard and dry, and this new place was extremely cramped. This fall was painful, and the 2 tumbled and knocked into each other. Xie Lian was used to enduring pain, so he didn't make a sound, but Shi Qingxuan cried out. That left Xie Lian's ears in pain instead, from the screaming. Worried something might have happened to him, he called out, "Lord Windmaster, are you okay?" Shi Qingxuan's head was at the bottom, and his legs were in the air. I don't know if I'm okay. I've never fallen like this before. Your Highness, working with you is really too thrilling. Xie Lian couldn't help but let out a small laugh at that, as he finally realized that the two of them had fallen into a hole in a tree. He crawled out of the hole with great difficulty and extended a helping hand to Xie Qingxuan. Thanks for all your hard work. You're welcome, Xie Qingxuan replied. He pulled on Xie Lian's hand and climbed out of the hole, dirty and disheveled, his silk dress in tatters. When he got out, he put a hand over his brow to block out the stinging brightness of the sun. Where's this? As you can see, it's a forest in the deep mountains, Xie Lian replied. He looked around and said, I think the stone doors are a spiritual device with the same function as the teleportation array. Different rolls on the dice will take us to different places. I wonder if we rolled any of the right numbers. Xie Qingxuan crossed his now bare arms and contemplated seriously. Using the teleportation array just once requires an immense amount of spiritual power. That Crimson Rainsalt flower created something like these stone doors just to prevent people from snooping around. It speaks volumes about his immense spiritual power and how deeply calculating he is. Although he appeared solemn, his unkempt appearance with bare arms and bare feet made it really difficult for him to come across as serious. Instead, he looked, well, hilarious. Xie Lian held back his laughter with immense difficulty as he thought of the way Huachang always lightly curled his lips and shook his head. Rather than calculating, it's more that he's mischievous, Xie Lian thought. Yeah, this was an important point, I think. Huachang using his powers in all these very impressive ways is a very scary thing to everyone else, and to Xie Lian, he just chooses to think that everything Huachang does is kind of cute. Again, this is peak crush behavior. You have such a crush on him. The two had only just emerged from the hole in the tree, and not a few steps after did a bunch of naked people, I forgot about this, suddenly jump out from the nearby bushes and surround them. They started jumping, howling as they did so. Ellipse replied to the howling. Should I count this for Xie Lian or both? I'm gonna count it as Xie Lian. The two were deeply shaken, and Xie Qingxuan cried, What's this now? Xie Lian raised his hand. Don't panic, let's take a look first. He studied them and realized they weren't actually naked. They were wearing animal skins and leaves and looked like they were ready to drink blood. They were holding long spears made of branches with sharp stones fastened at the ends as spearheads. And when they smiled at the pair, their teeth were jagged and sharp like saws. The pair bolted without a word. Xie Qingxuan shouted as he ran, My brother used to tell me about this, that deep in the southern mountains there are many fierce spirits that feast on human flesh. He told me to never come to such a place on my own. Is that what we ran into? Xie Lian was practiced in the art of escape, so his demeanor and manner were far more relaxed than Xie Qingxuan's. He replied calmly, That's very possible. Either way, we need to find the exit. Let's see if there are any more stone doors nearby. The fearsome spirits ran after them, screaming and howling tirelessly. At first, Xie Lian and Xie Qingxuan could only run for it, not fight back. Heavenly laws dictated that should gods descend to the mortal realm, they should never presumptuously use their powers to oppress mortals. This law was also to prevent heavenly officials from bullying mortals and creating disasters born of the abuse of their power. But these spirits kept hurling sharp rocks and branches at them, and without warning, one such branch scraped Xie Qingxuan's cheek. Uh-oh. Okay, but in the novel, it becomes abundantly more clear that these people are supposed to be spirits of some kind. But if they are spirits, why are we not allowed to use our spiritual powers to fight them? Because if they're spirits, they're not mortals, they're just in the mortal realm. Or is it more of a general rule thing, like you're not supposed to be disturbing the mortal realm, at all, if you can help it? And now that Xie Qingxuan is actively, hurt, he's using that as a loophole. Either way, Now this was absolutely unacceptable. Xie Qingxuan felt his face and found the faintest bloody scratch. He saw red. With a roar, he came to a sudden stop. He spun around and shouted, "You ignorant, violent hillbillies! Not only did you not bow before me, the Lord Windmaster, you dared to ruin my face! Unbelievable!" He pulled out his Windmaster fan, flashing it open with a powerful whoosh and swung with force. Their attackers were instantly blown off the ground and sent flying meters away, crashing into the nearby trees and howling as they hung off the branches. The two could finally stop running, and they took in deep breaths, trying to calm their heartbeats. As they panted, that thought came to Xie Lian again. It's such a hassle being a heavenly official. Gods, humans, ghosts, no one has it any easier. Yeah, this is not the first time Xie Lian has been like, I should have just stayed unascended. However, the universe had other plans for him. Xie Qingxuan heaved out his grievances as he turned to Xie Lian. Your Highness, you saw it, right? They were asking for it. I wasn't using my powers to bully them. That's right, I saw it, Xie Lian said. Xie Qingxuan felt his face again and mumbled under his breath. Even my brother wouldn't dare. He turned around again. Let's go find that stone door. Xie Lian nodded silently and watched Xie Qingxuan fix his clothes and hair until he looked properly dashing once more. Unfortunately, he was still dressed in a bedraggled purple silk dress, so it was a dash of peculiar flavor. It was a truly unforgettable sight. Xie Lian couldn't help but marvel. Thinking back on when they first met at Banyu Pass, the Lord Windmaster had seemed like such a bright and scintillating figure, and Xie Lian had thought him a powerful being with immeasurable depth, if not a peerless demonic cultivator, then a supreme master. Now that they were better acquainted, he realized all of that was but an illusion. The two walked relentlessly in circles through the forest and finally found a set of stone doors besides a different tree hole. This time, Xie Qingxuan refused to roll the dice and shook his head. I don't know what's going on, but even though my luck isn't always the best, it's not always the worst either. Fortune doesn't seem to be with me today. I rolled twice, and the first time was that earthworm tunnel. The second time, a bloodthirsty spirit playground. Who knows what's next? Xie Lian cleared his throat softly and guiltily replied, Maybe it's because I'm with you. I must have brought your luck down with me. What are you saying? Xie Qingxuan exclaimed, and this is one of my favorite things that Xie Qingxuan ever did. It's impossible for anyone to bring down my luck. Me, the Lord Windmaster. But why don't you give it a go? Maybe there's still some of that luck you borrowed from your Sanlang left. Your Sanlang? For some reason, Xie Lian felt a little embarrassed when he heard your Sanlang. He wanted to explain, but at the same time, what was there to explain? If he tried, it would only be weirder, so he didn't say anything in the end. He felt the dice in his hands and rolled them lightly. 2 6s. Xie Lian held his breath as he watched the images on the stone door transform and mentally prepared himself to face whatever came next, but this time, the picture didn't change, and the stone door creaked open. Behind the door was another long stairway that descended into darkness, and brisk air whirled up from the depths. The two exchanged a look, both thinking, after all that, did we circle back to the beginning? Even if they were back at the beginning, that was still better than these strange perils. They'd had enough, thus the pair resolutely stepped in. But the moment they entered, the door closed behind them, and when they reached out to push, they only felt the smooth surface of a stone wall. Looks like our only path is down, Xie Lian said. Alright, Xie Qingxuan sighed. Let me take a breather and we'll continue to play that despicable Crimson Rainsword Flowers game. The two once again descended through the long, rectangular, stony path. After 200 steps or so, Xie Lian realized something. Good news, Lord Windmaster. This isn't the same path we took the first time, even though they appear similar. Xie Qingxuan noticed it too. You're right. The first time we reached the stone wall after some 200 steps. But not this time, Xie Lian said softly. Looks like we're on the right path this time. As soon as he spoke, they came to a stop. Ahead of them, in the darkness, wafted the stench of blood, and accompanying that smell was the heavy breathing of a man. The two didn't move a muscle and said nothing. There was neither light nor flames, yet the other party had already sensed their presence. Right after they stopped, a cold voice rang out. "I have nothing to say," spoke the deep voice of a man. At the sound of that voice, Xie Qingxuan immediately ignited a palm torch. And that is the end of chapter 16 of Heaven Official's Blessing. That was a short little chapter of about 24-ish pages, which was mainly the Xie Qingxuan, Windmaster, and Xie Lian experiencing things together chapter. Yeah, I think the main point of this chapter really is building their friendship. They need to have experiences together, and putting them in a couple of life or death situations certainly does help that. And also we do have that really important moment of Xie Qingxuan being like, "What? You can't do anything to my luck? That's nothing to do with you." Which is so nice and so important considering how Xie Lian has this whole thing about his bad luck. Like, he really does believe that his own bad luck rubs off on people around him, which is what he thinks is happening here. But Xie Qingxuan is having none of that. So we have this really important scene, which I think is fundamental to the fact that Xie Qingxuan is becoming Xie Lian's friend, and that is so important, again, because, as I said when we were analysing this in the Donghua, they are on equal footing. These are two characters where both of them believe that the other is a skilled heavenly official. And that's it, you know? They're starting at equal grounds, meeting at equal grounds, and having conversations as equals. And I think that's important. I think that is really important for Xie Lian to have this sort of friendship, because he's never had the chance to have that. Now I'm just repeating stuff I've said like weeks and months ago. But basically his whole thing with like Fengxin and Muqing, for instance, they were, at the same time as they probably were his friends, they were also his servant and his bodyguard, which is, you know, it's a power imbalance, one that you don't find with Xie Lian and Windmaster. And even with Huachang right now, there is this discrepancy in their relationship, because Huachang, without having told Xie Lian, of course, is making friends with God, making moves on God. Just realizing that Huachang didn't curse God or fight God. Huachang wants to love God carnally. But anyway, the most boring part of that whole episode. I guess it's important as well to establish Huachang's power level, really, because Windmaster does make an important comment on that. But the places we go to don't seem very important. They just seem to be, you know, a show of traps, basically. The whole point, again, is the communication and the development between the Windmaster and Xie Lian. We learned one piece of new information, which is that the previous God of the West, maybe Waning Moon Officer, had the title of Your Highness, so we have another prince. And to me that's exciting, because we get a little bit more information about these characters, maybe. But other than that, I have like nothing to add to this conversation right now. It was just a chapter that was more or less exactly the same as the Donghua. It's completely understandable to me that these things had to happen, because we needed time and space for Xie Lian and Xie Qingxuan to have some experiences like this together. But oh my lord, I'm so glad it's over. It was also a very short chapter, which means that we should be rolling into the next one and maybe get some more information. Usually when I've read one chapter, I've had like 40-something pages, maybe even 60 pages of interesting shit happening. We've only had like 24 pages in this chapter. It was way too short for anything interesting to happen, I think, other than what I have mentioned. So why don't we prepare our hearts to meet Earthmaster? Because we're meeting Earthmaster at the beginning of the next chapter, which means that we're also going to get to the point where we talk to Huachang about all of this, and that is going to be so interesting to me. That is one of the scenes that has me extremely confused whenever I watch the scene in the Donghua, because I feel like there's being information departed to us here that I do not have the context of, and I keep being so, I don't know, things don't make sense and I want them to make sense. Oh gosh, I'm peeking the chapter title right now. Paradise to Ashes, the Paradise Manor burning down, the second coming of Fengxin already. Already, this chapter is gonna take us all the way to the reveal, right? How many pages? It's literally only another, 18 pages. Shit is about to happen very quickly. Okay, I've got my notes ready, so let's get to it. Windmaster has just recognized the voice and immediately lights up a palm torch. Chapter 17. Paradise to Ashes, the second coming of Feng Xin. Xie Lian didn't expect Shi Qingxuan to suddenly light a fire, and he didn't even have time to stop him before it was too late. The flames were exceedingly bright and revealed the silhouette of a black-clad man. The man in black had his head hung low against the stone wall at the end of the path. His face was white as a sheet, his black hair a mess, but underneath that unkempt appearance was an expression that shone with determination and a gaze burning like ice. Not burning like ice, like burning ice. Although he sat cross-legged, without a trace of discomfort, the stench of blood was thick in the air. He was clearly gravely wounded and was obviously imprisoned here. His "I have nothing to say" was probably him mistaking them for interrogators. Shi Qingxuan saw his face and cried out, "It's you!" That man didn't seem to expect guests and was taken aback. He looked as though he wanted to say, "It's you" as well, but alas, he held back. "So you two know each other?" After crossing many hurdles and finally finding someone, Shi Qingxuan looked relieved. He was about to respond when the man cut in. He said in a tone that left no room for dispute, "No." Shi Qingxuan raged at those words and pointed at him with his fan. "Is it so shameful to know me? What hurtful words, Ming Xiong?" Ming Xiong. I'm gonna have to practice that. I've heard it before. I've heard it a couple of times. It means Lord-ish. Something, I think. I have forgotten. "What hurtful words, Ming Xiong? I'm your best friend." The man denied it resolutely. "I have no friends who would run around in that sort of attire." Ellipsis reply. I'm doing this one for Shi Qingxuan. Shi Qingxuan was still in his tattered purple silk dress. Truly a shameful sight. Xie Lian wanted to laugh at the thought that there were really people in this world who would claim to be someone's best friend to validate themselves. It was definitely Shi Qingxuan's style, but Ming Xiong? If he remembered the 5 elemental masters correctly, the Earth Master's name was Ming Yi. And there we go. Xie Lian spoke up. "Are you perhaps the Lord Earthmaster?" "It's him you've met before," Shi Qingxuan replied. Xie Lian looked Ming Yi over and wondered, "Have we?" He didn't recall ever meeting such a character. "You have," Shi Qingxuan confirmed. "We have not," Ming Yi asserted. "Yes, you have," Shi Qingxuan said, exasperatedly. "Before, at Banyu Pass. You guys didn't forget that fast, did you?" Ellipsis answer. This ellipsis thing is getting more and more complicated. I'm just gonna register the ones that I think could be attributed to Xie Lian as Xie Lian, even if there are multiple ones. Seeing Ming Yi's face go from ghastly pale to ashen grim, Xie Lian finally remembered. When they first met at Banyu Pass, wasn't there a black-clad lady with Shi Qingxuan? Hua Chang had told him at the time that the black-clad person wasn't the Water Master, but was surely one of the 5 elemental masters. As expected, Shi Qingxuan was not only passionate about transforming into his own female form, he was also passionate about dragging others into doing the same. No wonder the black-clad lady looked extremely pissed off at the time, like she was disgusted. Recalling how Shi Qingxuan tried to wheedle him into joining in the fun, Xie Lian realized that it had truly been a close call and was glad he didn't give in. "Lord Earthmaster, are you the one who sent forth the ascending fire dragon?" Xie Lian asked. "I was," Ming Yi answered. They'd found the right person. Xie Lian nodded and said, "Lord Earthmaster is probably seriously wounded. We'd best make our escape now and talk later." Without any prompting, Shi Qingxuan knelt down and lifted Ming Yi onto his back. "Then let's get out of here," The three retraced their steps, and Shi Qingxuan talked as he walked. I have to ask, Mingxiong, aren't you good at fighting? You were perfectly fine back at the Banyu Pass, so how did you get beaten up this bad in a matter of days? How did you piss off that Crimson Rain Salt Flower? That's what I'm asking. There was a bit of, are you fucking for real? They're using the German word in this translation as well. That's fantastic, actually. I still have no idea how to say that in German, how to pronounce it. So I'm just gonna pretend I know how to.
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude? Oh my lord. Okay, I looked it up. There was a bit of Schadenfreude in his tone. Xie Lian mentally noted, he's speaking as though he isn't afraid of being punched. They really are good friends indeed. Mingyi looked like he'd had enough of listening to Shi Qingxuan talk, and he spat, "Shut up!" But this was also a question Xie Lian wanted the answer to, so he adjusted his wording. Lord Earthmaster, why would Hua Chang give you trouble? Mingyi didn't tell him to shut up, but he didn't answer either. Xie Lian turned his head to look at him and saw he had his eyes closed. Conveniently, after 3 days of imprisonment and interrogation and being so badly wounded, Mingyi must have felt so relieved by their sudden rescue that he could finally relax. His questions weren't urgent anyway, so Xie Lian didn't try to wake him. I feel like this is literally Mingyi closing his eyes to try to avoid giving these answers. The three ran up the stairs, and Xie Lian fished out his dice and rolled once more. He didn't know what number he rolled out in the dark, only that before them he heard a soft clack. A crack peeked open and light seeped through. Xie Lian pushed through the door and was just wondering whether he'd have the chance to take Lianlian away too, when unexpectedly the first step he took was hollow. The moment he felt himself fall forward, he cried, "Don't come out!" Xie Lian somersaulted through the air and fell on something hard. He felt brief relief that it wasn't a bladed mountain or a sea of fire that he'd fallen into. Bladed mountain, sea of fire is a reference to Diyu, Earth Prison, which is an afterlife in Chinese mythology where evil humans are punished after death, similar to the Western concept of hell. The Mountain of Blades is one of the many punishments that exists within it. I actually saw an exhibition at the National Museum of Korea where they had an artistic interpretation of this. So I'm a little familiar with this, actually. Until he looked up and realized that a bladed mountain or a sea of fire might have been better. Hua Chang's exceptionally handsome face was only inches away from his brows raised high and his gaze locked on him. When the stone door opened this time, it dumped him directly on top of Hua Chang. Yeah, I was aware of this. I was aware that this was going to happen. So I was expecting it. He'd fallen into the armory. At the moment, Hua Chang was sitting on the ground chair of the armory, composedly wiping the scimitar Erming. Even when someone suddenly fell into his lap from above, he'd only moved his hands away and stopped cleaning without any air of surprise. He gazed calmly at Xie Lian as if waiting for an explanation. Of course, Xie Lian had none and could only lie in his lap and stare back boldly. I don't know, like, he wasn't even surprised. I feel like, again, I feel like this is kind of proof of that little theory I had that this is kind of a setup. Hua Chang was expecting Xie Lian to go and do this. Like, he knows why Xie Lian is here. He knows why heavenly officials are in Ghost City. So I really do feel like maybe Hua Chang kind of had this planned out. And if he did in the end let him get away with Mingyi. I really have a suspicion that Mingyi must be two-timing for some reason. But the situation is so unclear to me. I can't tell if he is on Hua Chang's side or not. Like, I think it's more complicated than that. So yeah, here we are. Yeah, Xie Lian could obviously do nothing else but lie in his lap and stare back. Boldly. Suddenly, he saw another person at the periphery of his vision. And when he turned to look, he saw it was Lianlian. That bandaged boy was sitting on the floor looking terrified. In fact, his hands were clutching his head while he stared at the two of them. Why was Lianlian here too? It looked like HuaLian was interrogating him. But when Xie Lian peered upward, he saw half of Shi Qingxuan's white boots stepping over the void. There wasn't time to think, and Xie Lian quickly gripped HuaLian's shoulders. "I'm sorry," Xie Lian cried, then tackled HuaLian. This tackle shoved HuaLian a few meters away, and he even tumbled a couple of times before he found his footing. By then, Shi Qingxuan with Ming Yi still on his back had already jumped and landed with ease in the same spot HuaLian had just been sitting. Xie Lian forced himself to look back, and HuaLian was still looking at him without a word, but that one quirked brow was now arched even higher. Xie Lian leapt to his feet and backed off a few paces, apologizing as he did so. I'm sorry. Lianlian stared at HuaLian, seemingly extremely frightened, and rushed towards Xie Lian to hide behind him. Xie Lian shielded him and said, "Sanlang, allow me to explain." I'm waiting," HuaLian responded. "Wait, shouldn't it be the opposite?" Shi Qingxuan spoke up. "He should be the one who owes you an explanation. He's the one responsible for the missing heavenly official. Be wary, Your Highness." This was exactly the situation Xie Lian didn't want to face. He looked at HuaLian intently. "Sanlang, I don't know what misunderstanding occurred between you and Lord Earthmaster, but why don't we talk this out peacefully? The best case scenario would be HuaLian letting them go without harm. Although the Earthmaster was wounded, his life was not in danger and he wasn't missing any limbs. If he dropped the matter, this wouldn't need to escalate. If HuaLian let him leave, then when they reported back to the heavens, Xie Lian would do anything to beg Junwu for mercy, heedless of his own honor." Oh my god, Xie Lian. Unexpectedly, however, HuaLian asked, "Earthmaster? What Earthmaster?" After a pause, he continued, "Oh, did you mean the one on Windmaster's back? He's nothing more than an inept subordinate of mine." Both Xie Lian and Shi Qingxuan were taken aback at this. "He's obviously one of the heavenly officials. How dare you say otherwise?" Shi Qingxuan objected. HuaLian laughed. "Then I wonder why your honorable heavenly official would conceal his identity, leave behind his respectable title, and come work as an officer under me." HuaLian drew out his scimitar in a silvery crescent moon flash that followed Erming's curve. If that is genuinely the Earthmaster, then what commendable patience to put on an act for 10 years. In the past decade, I had thought him suspicious from time to time, but there was never any proof. If I hadn't spotted him traveling alongside the Windmaster in Banyu, I'd still be in doubt. In a split second, Xie Lian understood everything. So that was what happened. As it turned out, the reason the Earthmaster had gone missing and been imprisoned was ultimately because he had gone undercover and concealed his true identity for a decade to serve as a ghost officer under HuaLian. To be blunt, he was a spy. Once in a while, HuaLian would think this subordinate's actions were suspect, but without concrete evidence, he just kept him under observation. And it was only recently that HuaLian uncovered that the Earthmaster's deception during their journey to Banyu Pass. HuaLian had seen the Earthmaster next to the Windmaster. Even disguised as a woman, with thanks to the Windmaster, HuaLian still saw through that fake skin. He discovered the black-haired lady was the ghost officer he suspected and locked onto his identity as one of the 5 elemental masters. After the Banyu case was over, HuaLian probably left Puti Shrine to settle his score with the Earthmaster. It may have been during that deadly pursuit, and dire circumstances that Ming Yi set off the distress signal. Then Junwu summoned Xie Lian and gave him the mission to launch this rescue. That a heavenly official failed to mind his duties and instead went undercover in the ghost realm for over a decade was quite a scandal. Never mind the politics behind it. If Ming Yi was to remain imprisoned and tortured, all heaven would break loose if he actually died at Hua Chang's hands. The world would be gripped by absolute chaos. If that day came, no one would be spared. After thinking all this through, Xie Lian could only say, I understand that the fault is ours, but Sanlang, I still hope you will let us go this time around. Hua Chang watched him intently. Then, after a moment, he said quietly, Your Highness, some things are best not to get involved in overmuch. Suddenly, Xie Qingxuan cried from the side, Win, come to me! And then we're starting the whole thing. Yeah, okay. So we're again getting kind of like Xie Lian's explanation of what he thinks is going on here. And as we know, because we have talked to Junwu at the end of season 2, for instance, yeah, there was a spying thing going on here. And again, I suppose I could be convinced that this is what's happening. Like, Hua Chang has been suspicious of his ghost officer for a while. But it's so weird to me because I like we have all this evidence that Ming Yi is also likely Hua Chang's man in heaven. In other words, Hua Chang would have known his identity. And he would have known that he's good with the teleportation array thing, right? Though that is just a thing I've made a theory about. And again, like, I feel like if Hua Chang really didn't want to let Earthmaster go, he wouldn't have let him go. And I can't help but feel like Hua Chang was letting Xie Lian find out all these things. Like, he's not even surprised to see them. There has to be layers to this that we just don't get yet. But this is the current explanation that we're getting. I guess the only real concrete evidence I have that makes me doubt this right now is the fact that Junwu confirms to us that Hua Chang has spies in heaven. I don't think Junwu knows that it's Earthmaster, and that's the thing. I think that there is a two-timing thing going on, and I think that there's personal reasons why Ming Yi is choosing to do these things that we don't know yet. This is just me rehashing everything again. I don't think anything has become clearer to me yet, but I think that if I was reading the book, I might have taken that at face value, actually. Though there is a pattern here in that Xie Lian will come with an explanation and then something will happen and he'll change his explanation. So I think that's going to happen here. I think that's going to happen here as well, that this is the current explanation and it's kind of right, but there's also another layer that we're going to uncover later. And the fact that Hua Chang doesn't want Xie Lian to be involved in this, he wants him to be aware of this, I think. I think that it's well, since you're here, I'll let you know the truth. Kind of, sort of. But yeah, this is not that easy. This is not that straightforward. So Xie Qingxuan cried from the side, Wind, come to me! The moment the fan came out, wild gusts started blowing through the armory. The weapons on the walls and shelves began to rattle, humming and moaning. Lord Windmaster, we haven't done anything yet. Xie Lian was bewildered. I don't think either of you are going to make a move first, Xie Qingxuan said. So I'll be the bad guy. Wind, come to me! Oh my gosh, we have some art. We're already up in flames. The armory is already ablaze. And Hua Chang has his fan. Yeah, we're getting to that. There was an enormous cracking sound, and Xie Lian could feel clumps of dust falling from above his head. He looked up and saw that one side of the roof was being raised by the gusts, breaking at the seams and forming a large fissure. The armory had no windows or other visible exits. Xie Qingxuan's intention was not to fight, but rather to escape through a crack in the roof. Within the crazed gale, Hua Chang's raven black hair and maple red clothes whipped wildly. But the man himself remained utterly unmoved. He smirked. You have a fan, and coincidentally, so do I. Hua Chang retrieved a fan from one of the armory shelves. It was small and intricate, its spine and leaf made of pure gold. serene and beautiful. Huachang twirled it in his hand, then snapped it open. He grinned wordlessly, elegance suffusing his murderous aura. He flipped his hand and fanned, and a strong gust shot toward them with a blinding silver flash. The three dodged and heard behind them the sound of hail-like darts battering the walls and grounds. When they turned their heads to look, row upon row of long strips of golden foil were nailed into the ground. Each piece was thin but deeply embedded, its sharpness and viciousness clear. Every weapon inside this armory was a spiritual one, and any one he grabbed at random possessed equally murderous power. Huachang flipped his hand again, and another golden foiled gust blew. The winds called forth by Shi Qingxuan were strong, but the stronger they were, the more dangerous the situation became. The armory was only a hall, and its space was limited. The winds raised by the Windmaster's fan would rebound around the interior and blew the golden foil whirling around them, dancing in this madness. Xie Lian was afraid the golden foil would harm them, so he shielded Lianlian and cried, "Lord Windmaster, please stop for now." The golden foil whirled closely around Shi Qingxuan and Ning Yi. Shi Qingxuan wanted to stop as well, but the roof had been raised by his winds, revealing a crack. If he stopped now, all his efforts would go to waste. Just then, the golden sheets encircling them suddenly flew upward all at once. There was a cacophony of clinking and clanking. Then a person broke through the roof and leapt down, accompanied by showers of debris and dust. "Here he is!" The moment he landed, that person shouted, "Lord Windmaster, I apologize, but I just couldn't sit still any longer." Shi Qingxuan was overjoyed. "Chencho, you've come just in the nick of time." The young man carried a great sword. Its blade was wide as a grown man's palm. It was indeed Long Chencho. His great sword was shimmering gold, but at a closer look, it wasn't because his sword was golden, but because it had sucked up all the golden foil. They overlapped and covered the entirety of the blade, making it look as if it were a massive sword forged of gold. Long Chencho's greatsword was forged from a curious metal born from a lodestone mountain, and it had the amazing ability to magnetize and attract metal. As long as the opposing spiritual weapon did not exceed a certain level of spiritual power, once he gripped the hilt, he could mentally incite its ability and pull in all surrounding metals, absorbing them into his blade. Sure enough, soon the layer of gold foil was sucked into the sword, the gold disappearing completely. At this sight, Huachang laughed out loud, closed his fan, and tossed it away behind him. Are the heavenly officials so pathetically poor that once they see gold, they can't let it go? If those words were directed at Xie Lian, he would have pretended not to hear them, but they were directed at Long Chencho, a noble born of royalty. He hadn't cared for riches his entire life, and although he knew the enemy was intentionally taunting him, he was still provoked into a boiling rage. He raised his sword with both his hands and lunged at Huachang. Huachang drew his scimitar with one hand, twirling silver shimmers in the air, and calmly prepared to face the attack head-on. Long Chencho's strike used all of his power. He was like a newborn bull, unafraid of a tiger, but Xie Lian could already see the difference in their ability. If this strike landed, it would mean certain death. On the sidelines, even Shi Qingxuan, who couldn't deduce any such difference, watched with jittery alarm. He yelled, "Chencho, don't!" But at such a precarious moment, how could a mere shout stop the arrow that was nocked and ready to shoot? Unexpectedly, just when the scimitar and sword were about to clash, a blinding white light exploded within the armory. It was a light so immense it enveloped the entirety of the armory, and everyone temporarily lost their sight. All they could see was glaring white. Xie Lian, however, was prepared and could see with some difficulty. He gathered all the powers he borrowed from Shi Qingxuan in his right hand and transformed the energy to a giant flame before shooting it. A corner of the armory was immediately ablaze. Soon after, Xie Lian released Roya and tied himself, Shi Qingquan, Mingyi, Long Chenchuo, and Lang Ying together. He shouted, "Lord Windmaster, blow us upward!" Yeah, so there's a little hint that Xie Lian is behind the white flash, in that he was prepared for it, but this is kind of writing the same way that the Donghua did it. Even though Shi Qingquan couldn't open his eyes, he still followed Xie Lian's directions. He raised his fan and snapped downward. A violent twister formed on the flat ground, blowing toward the ceiling, and at last broke through the crumbling roof. Roya had the 5 of them tied in a bundle and flew straight into the sky. In mid-air, their sight finally returned to them, and Shi Qingquan could see that dozens of meters down below there were giant flames ablaze, black smoke heavy in the air. The armory was on fire. Afraid that HuaLian would give chase, he flapped his fan. Now he was truly fanning the flames. That he has kind of been doing this whole time, actually. The blaze instantly erupted in size from the wild gust, and embers landed on all the nearby buildings. Now, over half of Paradise Manor was ablaze in a field of red. With great difficulty, Xie Lian finally grabbed hold of Shi Qingquan, who was fanning with all his might. "Lord Windmaster, please stop fanning! The whole place is going to burn down!" Startled, Shi Qingquan cried, All right, I'm stopping. Let me go, Your Highness, your grip is too strong." It wasn't until the Windmaster stopped his winds that Xie Lian let go. He looked down, and amidst the red flames, Xie Lian still spotted that crimson silhouette. They were too high in the sky, and he couldn't see it clearly, but his gut instinct told him that in that moment, HuaLian was standing there, watching him. He didn't give chase, nor did he put out the flames. He only stood there, letting the wildfire devour capriciously. Outside Paradise Manor, screams and howls roared from all over Ghost City's streets. The crowds of ghosts ran amok. Xie Lian couldn't breathe. His voice had gone hoarse, and he mumbled to himself, I only wanted to start a small fire to create a distraction. How did it turn out like this? It was only a little earlier, when HuaLian had leaned against the doors of that armory, half-jokingly telling him he wanted to give him the entire armory and every weapon inside, but now everything was engulfed in a sea of fire. Although there might be many weapons made of true gold that feared no fire, there were surely also many that could not withstand the flames. After all this burning, many treasures would be reduced to ash. Xie Lian had not expected the flames to grow so violently, devouring all of Paradise Manor. Even if HuaLian didn't consider it at home, it was still his residence. Seeing how crushed Xie Lian was, Shi Qingquan also began to feel bad. Okay, it's nice that he recognizes this, though. It's nice that he recognizes that this to Xie Lian is such a unfortunate situation. I'm really sorry, Your Highness. I didn't think things through. I only wanted to escape faster. This is all my fault. It was definitely only a small flame at first. If Crimson Rainsalt Flower comes knocking for payback, you just tell him to come to me. Don't worry, I can pay whatever amount. Money is never an issue. But money was definitely not the issue. Xie Lian closed his eyes, unable to speak. Shi Qingquan patted his shoulder in consolation, but suddenly felt wetness on his fingertips and smelled a strange, stark stench of blood. He turned his head to look, and his face lost color in alarm. Your Highness, what happened to your hand? Xie Lian's right hand, and everything traveling up from it, was covered in blood. His entire right arm was thoroughly dyed red, and the shaking that racked the limb could not be written off as a minor issue. Yet both his hands still firmly gripped a white silk band to keep everyone from being blown apart by wild winds. What happened to you? Shi Qingquan cried. Yeah, this is no minor injury, by the way. Xie Lian came back to his senses a little and shook his head. It's nothing, just a small injury. I'll be fine once we're back up there. That white light was you, Xie Qingquan remembered. Your Highness, you broke those two apart? I'm a swordsman after all, Xie Lian replied, in case anyone forgot. Xie Qingxuan had guessed right. At the moment, right before Hua Chang and Long Chencho's blades clashed, Xie Lian darted in. He'd randomly taken a sword from the stacks of weapons on the shelves and made 2 particular moves between the sword and the scimitar. In the first move, he knocked away Long Chencho's greatsword. In the second move, he blocked the scimitar Meng. The strength of those 2 moves was not only powerful but extremely precisely controlled. Even when Xie Lian blocked both blades, the force of the strikes did not rebound onto the attackers. This was because, with Xie Lian sandwiched in the middle, he had used his own sword and arm to absorb both attacks completely. Long Chencho's greatsword was manageable, but Hua Chang's scimitar was a force to be reckoned with. The sword Xie Lian had used was one from Hua Chang's collection, so naturally it was also a formidable blade. When those 2 blades crossed, it blasted that blinding white light. With the 2 moves, the first strike against Long Chencho's greatsword caused a crack in Xie Lian's sword, and the second strike against the scimitar Meng shattered it to pieces. All of this was done within a fraction of a second, faster than the eye could see. Xie Qingxuan looked at the tragic state of Xie Lian's right hand and determined that the whole right arm was probably badly mangled. He said, "Your Highness, you're so full of vigor. I can't believe you blocked them single-handedly." The flower-crowned martial guard, sword in one hand, flower in the other. Xie Qingxuan had only remembered the flower. He had forgotten that Xie Lian ascended because of his sword. Oh, that's a good paragraph there. That's a good sentence. And I think that a lot of other gods are struggling to remember the same thing. That Xie Lian, first and foremost, was an exceptional martial god. Thinking back on how close of a call this was, Xie Qingxuan's heart was still racing. Thank goodness your highness had those moves, otherwise who knows how many pieces Long Chencho would have been cut into by Hua Chang. The strange thing was, Long Chencho appeared to be unharmed, but he remained in a stunned state, like his soul had left his body. Chencho? Xie Qingxuan called. Chencho, are you alright? Wake up, what's with you? Has your sight not returned yet? Riding on a tailwind, the group finally reached the heavenly capital. Dragging and carrying, they rushed past the ascension gates and ran straight for the Palace of Divine Might. Since Lianlian couldn't enter the palace, Xie Lian settled him in a small side chamber. No one seemed to be on duty, so he shouted within the communication array. Are there any fellow heavenly officials here? Please, everyone, come quickly to the Palace of Divine Might. It's an emergency. We have a wounded official. As he shouted, Xie Qingxuan snapped his fingers and switched back to his white Taoist robes. He waved and released 100,000 merits. It's 2 wounded officials, Xie Lian said hurriedly. Lord Windmaster, don't get so excited. We can ask normally. There's no need to distribute any merits. Everyone will naturally come once they hear us. No, your highness, Xie Qingxuan said. You have to know, giving out merits works 100 times faster than asking alone. Soon enough, a voice came from the distance. Who's wounded? When the word who was uttered, the voice was still far away, but by the end of the question, the person had appeared. Feng Xin. Again, just noting that Feng Xin is first on the scene, and yeah, I think that he came the moment he heard Xie Lian ask that first time. And I think that the person who's going to be second on the scene also came after hearing Xie Lian's voice. Though perhaps with a little bit more hesitation. Can't be too eager, huh? He entered the hall, looked at Xie Lian, then at Long Chencho, his face faltering. I'm fine, but the Earthmaster seems to be badly wounded, Xie Lian said. After a moment of silence, Feng Xin said, What happened to your right arm? Yeah. Even though Xie Lian is like, well, Earthmaster is badly wounded, Feng Xin is looking at Xie Lian. So what if he's injured? Another voice came. There are so many heavenly officials, and who among us has ever returned unscathed after a patrol? The voice was decorous and mellow, but the words were unpleasant. It was, of course, Mu Qing. He crossed into the great hall and also took a look at Xie Lian, then at Long Chencho. Yet the face he made was the opposite of Feng Xin. He merely arched his brows slightly, looking like he was ready to watch a good show. Seeing how Feng Xin moved to check on Xie Lian's arm, he bent down to check on Ming Yi. He said, "So this is Lord Earthmaster." During that exchange, a number of heavenly officials poured into the hall one after another. Earthmaster Yi had always been inconspicuous and stayed out of sight, so for many, it was the first time they had ever seen him in person. And they bunched around, staring at him with great interest. The masses were mostly confused, not knowing why they were gathered at the Palace of Divine Might, but having collected the Windmaster's merits, they had to come and check it out. "Thanks, but I'm alright. Leave it and it'll recover on its own," Xie Lian said to Feng Xin. Feng Xin didn't mince words. "Take care of yourself." Xie Lian uttered another soft thanks, but when he turned around, Long Chenchuo was staring at him with a dazed look. "Your Highness Taihua, what's the matter?" he asked. Feng Xin also noticed something off about Long Chenchuo and questioned. Was His Highness Taihua also injured somewhere? "I don't think so. Let me see," Xie Lian said and extended his hand, reaching for Long Chenchuo's brow. Yet unexpectedly, with his quick eyes and deft hand, Long Chenchuo seized Xie Lian's wrist. There was still some hesitation on Long Chenchuo's face, as if he had discovered something but still wasn't sure. However, there was already fire burning in his eyes. Xie Lian felt the trembling of rage passing from Long Chenchuo's arm to his. Now all the spectating officials had noticed this unusual situation and started whispering among themselves. Shi Qingxuan and Mu Qing both began to rise, and Feng Xin asked, "Your Highness Taihua, what are you doing?" Long Chenchuo finally moved his lips. He only uttered 2 words, but Xie Lian's heart sank all the way to the very bottom. "State Preceptor?" Long Chenchuo said through gritted teeth. Xie Lian's pupils contracted slightly. The onlooking heavenly officials muttered, half guessing, half confused, "What State Preceptor? Who's the State Preceptor?" Some were more astute and immediately figured it out. Long Chenchuo was the Crown Prince of Yong'an, and the State Preceptor of Yong'an during his time was the second of the dual evil masters, the State Preceptor Feng Xin. No one knew his origin or his background, yet in this moment Long Chenchuo had Xie Lian in his grip and called him State Preceptor. Did this mean that Xie Lian was the evil cultivator who brought ruin to Yong'an, the State Preceptor Feng Xin? However, Xie Lian was the Crown Prince of Shanle. The kingdom of Shanle had fallen at the hands of the kingdom of Yong'an, so why would he become the State Preceptor of Yong'an? His Highness Taihua was renowned in the upper court for his optimism and cheerfulness. He was never calculating, nor did he make things difficult for anyone. And he had never before shown such an expression, half despair, half rage, half enmity, half hatred. Long Chenchuo had Xie Lian in a death grip, his breathing growing harsher, and finally he said in a strained voice, I killed you with my own 2 hands, sealed you in that coffin myself. You, State Preceptor, you certainly are remarkable." Heavens, it would appear that something big was about to go down today. Oh my god. Yep. Yeah, we got to that point. The reveal. The function reveal. Oh my lord. Whew. Yeah, so here we are again. This is fun. I really love this scene, like in the Dongwu as well, like when we get back to the Heavenly Capital and you see everyone amassing and reacting. Like I love this scene so much because you get to know so much about the characters, their motivations, their thoughts, and at the same time we're just walking into an even bigger dramatic situation with Long Chenchuo coming out with this accusation. And oh my lord, it's so good. It's so good. We've left Hua Cheng in the dust again. Well, rather in the ashes of his collection. It's such a scene made even more by the imagery that Dongwa gave us, both in the opening and in its own episode. Paradise Manor burning down is a part of this whole metaphor, and it's giving Xie Lian so much grief. Like, as he's leaving from there, that's his biggest concern. It's Hua Cheng, it's the fact that he is remembering standing there with him, and now all this is going to pieces. And I think they really managed to convey that very well in the Dongwa. Like, we understand as we're watching that that's Xie Lian's biggest concern, until, of course, Lang Jin-cho suddenly slaps in with that reveal. I only read, like, short, around 40 pages, but one more chapter could be a little long. 10. It's 10 pages. The next chapter is 10 pages. We might just read the next chapter as well, actually. While we're at it, why not? Because now we're finally moving into my favorite arc, and I was not expecting to get this far already. But you know what? Why not? Why not? Let's read the next chapter as well, since I'm already on a roll and I got really excited that we finally got to this part. I wasn't going to. I really wasn't going to, but it's the function arc, guys. It's the function arc, and I am weak to the function arc. So I apologize again for the lack of discussion, but we are going straight into this. Chapter 18. The villainous state preceptor, gilded banquet awash in blood. Feng Xin was standing the closest to the two, and he looked at Xie Lian with unconcealed shock. Mu Qing's eyes were glimmering, however, and his restrained shock contained a faint underlying excitement. Shi Qingxuan led Ming Yi down and said, "Chencho, did you make a mistake? If His Highness was the state preceptor Feng Xin, why would it take you until now to recognize him?" Another voice rang out from the sidelines. "Qingxuan, you don't know. Legends say the state preceptor Feng Xin was aloof, mysterious, and cold. He never showed his face in public and always wore a mask of silver. I'm sure His Highness Tai Hua must have never seen his face." The one who spoke had his arms crossed and stood on the sidelines. It was Pei Ming. The mere sight of him annoyed Shi Qingxuan, and he swung his whisk. "If that's the case, that means no one ever saw what the state preceptor Feng Xin looked like. Why must General Pei make it sound like it's a sure thing that His Highness Shan Le is the state preceptor Feng Xin?" When Shi Qingxuan and Xie Lian worked together, it was a ridiculous and hilarious affair, but in the heavenly court, they were composed, calm, and poised, very mindful of their demeanors. Just then, a snow-white figure appeared from the back hall. Enter the Emperor. "Hello, Sky Daddy." Upon his arrival, everyone settled down. The chattering officials quickly returned to their respective places and bowed. "My lord." Zheng Wu motioned with one hand, and everyone straightened up once more. He walked willfully, and as he passed by Xie Lian, he tapped on his right shoulder. Fresh blood was still dripping down Xie Lian's sleeve, but with that tap, it ceased immediately. After briefly checking over Ming Yi, Zheng Wu stated, "It is nothing serious. Settle the Earthmaster first." Thus, four medical heavenly officials came over to gather Ming Yi up and carry him away. Shi Qingxuan looked as if he wanted to follow, but seeing such tension in the Palace of Divine Might, he couldn't not worry and decided to stay after all. And thank God he did! That's actually such a wow. That's amazing. Shi Qingxuan, wow. His best friend is hurt badly, and he wanted to obviously be with him, but he realizes that shit is about to go down, and he decides that he needs to be here. And I think that was actually needed. Well done. Well done, Shi Qingxuan. Applause. With hands clasped behind his back, Zheng Wu returned to the throne before he spoke again. "So tell me, what has happened now? Why is Tai Hua refusing to let Shan Le go? And why is Shan Le bowing his head?" Lang Jin-cho took another glance at Xie Lian and saw that he was still silent. As they were surrounded by heavenly officials and there was no need to fear his escape, Lang Chencho released his wrist and turned to John Wu with a bow. My lord, many centuries ago, this man assumed the name of Fang Xin, slaughtered my blood clan and brought ruin to my kingdom. I demand a duel and ask my lord to be our judge. Within the Palace of Divine Might, even those who had never heard the name Fang Xin hurried to research the name within their communication array. It was a good thing Ling Wen was present to answer everyone's query, as what was uncovered was truly an astonishing tale. The state preceptor Fang Xin was both the savior and teacher of the crown prince of Yong'an, Lang Chencho. He was eventually named as one of the dual evil masters because of the infamous Gilded Banquet massacre of the Yong'an monarchy. What's a Gilded Banquet? Shi Qingxuan asked. Lord Windmaster, Ling Wen replied. This Gilded Banquet was a tradition taken from the nobility of Shanle. It was called as such because every wine cup, every utensil and piece of cutlery, and every other such serving tool was of the highest grade of gold, incomparably extravagant. At the very beginning, when the kingdom of Yong'an was established, they vowed to the world that they would put an end to the culture of excess from the old kingdom. They swore that they would never repeat the same mistakes, that they would focus solely on the people. And yet, after only a few decades, the old ways were relearned, including that culture of excess. Ling Wen continued. On the night of the 17th birthday of the Crown Prince of Yong'an, the palace threw a gilded banquet in celebration. The state preceptor Fang Xin, it was at that feast, with a sword in hand, that he slaughtered every member of the royal family in attendance. The golden goblets toppled, and blood spilled like wine. Because of his late arrival to the feast, only the Crown Prince of Yong'an escaped death, but he too was almost killed. This coup was no doubt a huge blow to Yong'an. If it wasn't for Lang Chencho, whose arduous efforts won the people's hearts, the country would have certainly been plunged into chaos. It was with great difficulty that the upheaval was settled, and soon after the Yong'an monarchy released a bounty for the capture of the fugitive murderer. When he was at least apprehended, Lang Chencho killed that evil cultivator, the state preceptor Fang Xin, with his own 2 hands. Okay, this is kind of interesting though, because that means that Xie Lian was actually, alive for a time he was alive the whole time, I guess, but he was free for a time just after the massacre. So that means that he had time to do things, I suppose, but he didn't run away. He wanted to be there to take this punishment. It was just interesting to me that this was not immediately after or very soon after. It was a little bit after. He then sealed the corpse within a triple-layered coffin before condemning it to rest deep within the earth. However, the roots of the monarchy had been gravely damaged. It was an inevitable, gradual decline until it was at last replaced by the next dynasty. Okay, so we do know that Yong'an is no more. And this is kind of direct proof that this event, the Gilded Banquet massacre, eventually did lead to the end of Yong'an. So in a sense, I guess Qirong kind of got what he wanted, huh? Lang Chencho's glare was locked firmly on Xie Lian. I never understood why you did what you did. You said it was because you couldn't stand seeing us on the throne, but I didn't believe it. And I never thought you wanted to overthrow the monarchy and take our place. But now I finally know why. The heavenly officials gasped, muttering to each other. It was revenge. Ain't that just it? The kingdom of Shanle had fallen, so he had to ruin Yong'an too. The Yong'an people killed his own royal parents, so he had to murder the royal parents of the crown prince of Yong'an. An eye for an eye. It's pure vengeance. But the ones who wiped out Shanle weren't from Lang Chencho's generation. Such retribution was completely unreasonable. And here I thought the laughingstock of the 3 realms was just a fool. Turns out he's actually quite an aggressive character, becoming a state preceptor in an enemy state as his cover, slaughtering the entire monarchy in one go. Incredible. Oh my god, it's the fucking crowd making up their own story. But, this is the story that is, kind of Based on what has been told, Feng Xin was evil. He did all these things. So now that they know it's Xie Lian, they're just trying to connect the dots, so to speak. But I guess this is kind of like a warning as well. Because in the sense, they're doing exactly the same thing I'm doing, except I'm doing it from Xie Lian's perspective, not from the other people's perspectives. So there are people on this board that I don't know very well. Mingyi is one of them. Zhan Wu is another. And I suppose Feng Xin and Mu Qing are still kind of mysterious to me. And it's kind of important to remember that I'm really just seeing it from an outsider's perspective. And there are probably things that I still need to learn in order to properly, understand what is going on. Xie Lian could feel Zhan Wu's eyes on him and closed his own. He heard Zhan Wu say a moment later, Tai Hua, you firmly believe Shan Le to be Feng Xin, but do you have proof? The state preceptor Feng Xin was the one who taught me swordsmanship. How could I not recognize him the moment he struck? Lang Chenchuo replied. The hushed whispers grew even more excited. Even if he needed to keep his cover intact, wasn't teaching the Crown Prince swordsmanship a little unnecessary? Since his third ascension, we haven't seen him touch a sword even once. It's no wonder he's afraid to blow his cover. Lang Chenchuo stated, I recently went to Ghost City and faced Crimson Rainsalt Flower. As the crowd listened to him explain what transpired in Ghost City and about Huachang, many of the officials shuddered just hearing him mentioned. Lang Chenchuo continued his story. When I was 12, I was once kidnapped during an outing. The kidnappers dragged me into the streets, and when the guards caught up, there was a violent brawl. A street busker was dragged into chaos and, bruised as he was, he broke up the fight with a mere tree branch. With it, he easily parried 2 swords and rescued me. The kidnappers and the guards had all suffered grave injuries, and so it was this busker who helped me escape and escorted me all the way back to the palace. Out of immense gratitude, His Majesty my father and my mother the Queen fervently tried to retain him and discovered his tremendous ability in swordsmanship, so he was ultimately invited to become our state preceptor. He taught me the art of the blade for 5 years, and I'm more than familiar with his style. How could I be mistaken? Your Highness Tai Hua, Mu Qing said quietly. You said yourself that what you saw was only a fleeting image. No one has confirmed it except you. Thus these accusations are only by your word. Mu Qing's argument sounded like it was in Xie Lian's favor, but the truth was more complex than that. Mu Qing must have determined that Lang Chenchuo was quite convinced of his take on the evidence, and the more he doubted the truth, the more adamant Lang Chenchuo would be to prove himself. This was not the least bit of helpful in Xie Lian's situation. Sure enough, Lang Chenchuo demanded of the crowd, Fine, bring me a sword, please. There were many martial guards within the hall who carried swords, and hearing his call, a sword was immediately thrown in his direction. Lang Chenchuo caught it and thrust it in front of Xie Lian. Take it! We'll duel right now. No holding back. Using everything we've got. We'll see whether we have the same style and whether you taught me. Everyone thought demanding a duel in the Palace of Divine Might was insolent, but when they thought of the Gilded Banquet massacre and how a dignified crown prince's entire family was slaughtered in cold blood, they could understand his provocation. Xie Lian's injury was still on Shi Qingxuan's mind, and Shi Qingxuan tried to reason with Lang Chenchuo. Chenchuo, His Highness blocked that attack from Huachang for you and injured his right arm. How can he duel with you? Hearing this, Lang Chenchuo suddenly reached out with his left hand and struck down heavily on his own right arm. There was a loud crack, and a mist of blood erupted from his right shoulder. Blood spurted profusely as the limb fell limp. Onlookers could see with no inspection that it was a severe injury, and everyone was shocked. Xie Lian was also taken aback. He finally lifted his eyes. What are you doing? Lord Windmaster is right, Lang Chenchuo said. You did injure your arm saving me, and so I return an arm in kind. But just as it is true that you saved me, your murder of my clan is also the undeniable truth. I know of your dexterity, and that you can use a sword in either hand without the slightest difference on your skills. We'll duel with our lefts. If you're a man, pick up the sword. Xie Lian looked at the sword, then looked at him. In the end, he shook his head slowly. I swore many years ago to never kill with the sword again. His words made Lang Chencho remember that night. And the scene that greeted him when he arrived at the banquet, that black-robed man, his eyes frighteningly bloodshot, pulling a long sword from the dead body of his father with his left hand. The sound of it was like meat being butchered. Shi Qingxuan swung out his whisk, and it wrapped around the sword to hold it in place. I think there must be some misunderstanding here. If that state preceptor Fang Xin always wore a mask, then anyone could have pretended to be him to commit murder. What does my lord think? Everyone turned their gaze to the jaded throne. Shanle, Zhongwu spoke. Xie Lian bowed. Yes, my lord. Do you concede that Tai Hua's accusations are true? Zhongwu asked. I concede, Xie Lian replied. The I concede was uttered frostily, the complete opposite of Xie Lian's usual manner of speaking, and the faces of Fang Xin, Mu Qing, and Shi Qingxuan all changed colors. Zhongwu nodded. He then questioned further. The state preceptor Fang Xin, who committed the Gilded Banquet massacre, was that you? After a moment of silence, Xie Lian raised his head, his expression one of determination. That's right. It was me. His answer was loud and clear and left no opportunity to turn back. So you admit it? Good, Lang Chencho said. As was previously explained, there were innumerable heavenly officials with mortal blood on their hands in the upper court, but truthfully, not many had their old blood debts escalate to this point. After all, most killed mortals didn't have descendants of Lang Chencho's caliber in their families, descendants who could demand justice from the murdered people from the position of an esteemed heavenly official. Pei Shou was under the protection of General Pei, but in the end, he couldn't escape exile. Xie Lian had no one to stand behind him. This would all depend on whether Zhongwu still valued his past affection towards Xie Lian and whether the emperor had the heart to protect him. Many still couldn't comprehend what sort of feelings Zhongwu held towards Xie Lian. During his first ascension, the crown prince of Shanle was, of course, treated with the utmost favor. But the two had a huge fight during his second ascension, and Xie Lian even stabbed Zhongwu a few times before he was defeated. This third ascension, the two had been at peace with each other, as if those past conflicts had been forgotten. Zhongwu had even built a brand new palace for Xie Lian, located in the nicest area of the heavenly capital. It was truly difficult to understand. Thus, countless pairs of ears perked up, waiting to hear how the emperor would sentence Xie Lian. Unexpectedly, before Zhongwu had the chance to pass a verdict, Xie Lian spoke. Shanle has a presumptuous request. Speak, Zhongwu responded. I humbly ask my lord to remove my godhood and banish me to the mortal realm, Xie Lian said. Some of the heavenly officials were shocked, and at the same time somewhat amazed. No one wanted to be banished, after all. It wasn't easy to ascend, and to work so hard and climb so high only to plummet, just thinking about it made one want to sigh in lament. There was no way they'd dare ask for banishment from Zhongwu so straightforwardly. At the same time, some of the other heavenly officials couldn't care less. In this sort of situation, it might be better to give up than to vehemently deny everything. Xie Lian had been banished twice already. A third time probably meant nothing to him. He should be used to it by now. Lang Chencho, however, objected. I don't need you to banish yourself. Ascension is based on ability alone. I only want a duel. I don't want to fight you, Xie Lian said. Why not? Lang Chencho shouted. It's not like we've never fought before. Life or death, the outcome doesn't matter. Let's just put an end to this, Xie Lian said plainly. No reason, but fight me and you will surely die. And that is the end of chapter 18? Holy shit. That was the end of chapter 18 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And that is where I will end today, but oh my god. Okay, I'm kind of glad we did read that last 10-page chapter, because we're getting some really cool details in here. Right, so what we're learning more or less confirms that Xie Lian, or rather Junwoo's feelings on Xie Lian, is what will determine kind of what happens here. And the heavenly officials recognize this. They are realizing that whatever their relationship is, as complicated as it is, Xie Lian has been favored. He was the emperor's favorite in his first ascension, and yes, they had the fight in the second ascension, but in this turn, because Xie Lian has gone through this a few times, there has only been peace, and he is even, he is not a rich heaven official at all. He has basically no merits to his name. But still, the emperor built him a palace in heaven, something that he couldn't have afforded, and even put it in the nicest area of heaven. Like, that's like favoritism of like the highest degree. So what we know at this point is that Junwoo is in need of a heavenly official who he can trust, because he is in a bit of a predicament. And if the outcome, like, I think he was delaying this and hoping for a different kind of outcome anyway. Like, I think he was working kind of behind the scenes to retain Xie Lian, which is why he, put him in house arrest, which is going to happen soon, so that he could delay kind of this decision and find a way to turn it into, well, he's going to keep Xie Lian around. In fact, if this hadn't been resolved the way it had, I really do think that Junwoo would have found a way to keep Xie Lian around for his new big predicament. But then HuaLian comes along and we reveal the truth behind all of this. And then Long Chen-cho drops the charges and we're kind of back to square one again, except, this is all out in the open now. If nothing else, this chapter really tells us how much Junwoo's words weight in heaven. And again, like we already know that he's the most powerful god, and that his word is basically law. And because he's, the one responsible for banishments, like the one who makes them happen. Yeah, this was interesting. I really liked reading this and getting to understand like what the heavenly officials are thinking right now about this whole situation. And we're getting more moments where we get to see everyone else's reactions to different parts of this conversation and them poking their own heads in to either say something, to push the conversation in a certain manner. You get a bit of Function's defensiveness and also his disbelief. You get the Windmaster being annoyed with Pei Ming, just in general. And you get Muqing prodding Long Chen-cho, seemingly with the intention of, in a sense, prove his own conviction by going the extra step and actually demanding that duel. And of course, you get the Emperor asking these questions and, again, obviously, I think, delaying the whole situation at large. Another detail I really did enjoy was Shi Qingxuan deciding to stay behind in spite of actually wanting to follow the Earthmaster, Mingyi, because he's badly injured and he wants to stay by his side. Again, rolling back to this Earthmaster thing, one thing that I just keep thinking about is, yes, all these heavenly officials, they don't really see him in heaven. Where the fuck does he and Shi Qingxuan hang out? Because I feel like if Shi Qingxuan hadn't seen him regularly over the last decade, like surely Shi Qingxuan knows that he's been up to something, or he has a clone. Like, this cloning business keeps coming back to me now. Gosh, I'm a bit split on the whole idea of these clones, because okay, having one clone and having one clone to control around is an interesting piece of world building and ability that could lead to so many different things. Now, a problem, I think, if a character can have multiple ones, because there's no limit to how much convoluted storytelling you would have to do with that. Because we know now that Pei Shaw could create a clone of himself, and very likely other heavenly officials might be able to do the same. The teleportation array is a skill shared by multiple heavenly officials, and as is the ability to change one's gender. So there are, like, these spells seem to be like a universal thing that everyone could kind of teach themselves or learn from someone. So yeah, while Pei Shuo was, you know, very skilled, I am sure that there are multiple characters on this board who would be able to do the same. And again, it's getting me a bit iffy because this is a very difficult power to kind of create restraints around. Like, yes, a clone would be maybe a bit less powerful, but we don't have confirmation of how this power disparity works, and we don't have confirmation of how many clones a person can make and how long they can make them last. And so this is honestly one of the things that I'm like, I hope that we kind of get a little bit of a clearer idea of how this is used. Because in the world building at large, this could create problems for, well, everything. Because a clone is a way out of any sort of storytelling suddenly. Because a character can be in multiple places at once and can be involved in multiple things all at once. So I'm not sure how I feel about the whole clone setup just yet. Because I do feel like it's gonna pop up again, because it was introduced to us through Pei Shuo, which is quite early on in the story. And as it's not specified to be a ability that only he has, yeah, I'm kind of nervous at how this is gonna go. I hope it's not gonna be a weakness to the rest of the plot, because I'm fearing that it might be. It might contribute to some lazy outs, and I hope that the author, MXTX, is going to work hard to avoid those and give us like something more to hold on to here. But okay, I've been filming for a while now, so I'm getting a little bit tired, but that was a fun read. I couldn't stop at the 2 chapters because I was just very excited to keep going. And I'm so happy I did. I'm super excited to talk to you guys about what I've learned. So I'll be seeing you in book club soon enough. But before that, let's go through our tallies. For our ellipsis tallies, we have added 4 more ellipsis answers from Xie Lian that I've attributed to Xie Lian, bringing our total up to a total of 12 for volume 2 and 39 altogether. Xie Qingxuan also contributed at least 1. I could probably have counted more, but honestly I'm more interested in Xie Lian's, I suppose. So 2 that I've counted for others in volume 2, and the total is now 16. Laugh or Cry, 0 added, which I thought was kind of funny because we did have a lot of Laugh or Cry worthy moments, I think. It's a good thing we're not overusing it, right? The Gaga tally had a total of 7 new Gagas added in the chapter we read with Huachang. Now he's not here right now, but he will pop up soon enough, so I'm sure that after the next chapter we will be adding to the Gaga tally once again. 7 new Gagas, bringing volume 2 up to a total of 37, and the grand total of Gagas is therefore 51. Super excited to be back in the function arc, not rowing any boats anywhere on any rivers this time around. This has been Amelia, aka Space Puffin, and I will see you in the next one.